The existence behind the heavenly court was best left unspoken. After all, the common world had no contact with such a level of power. Even many so-called infinite Tao cultivators were unqualified to know. Even Su Zimo only suspected what lay behind it. He had no proof, so he chose not to say more. What mattered now was the situation in front of him. Though the name Skyburial Buddha carried immense prestige, in the end, everything in this world revolved around profit. Su Zimo only knew one thing. The other man had joined the heavenly court, and that made them enemies. That was enough. The Skyburial Buddha floated silently in the void, his body suspended midair. His expression was neither joyful nor angry. It was as if nothing in this world could stir his heart. Skyburial, you've joined the heavenly court too? The Light Lord Sage Monarch said with a laugh. How about this? Whatever the heavenly court offered you, the radiant court will double it. The Skyburial Buddha remained calm. His voice was faint as he replied, Light Lord Sage Monarch, do you wish to be cut into pieces by me right here? Peace, peace, Buddha! The Light Lord Sage Monarch chuckled. Your opponent today isn't me. If you have any complaint, you may bring it up with our ancestor. The moment his words fell, a golden coffin floated out from within the nearby sun. When the coffin appeared, it was as though it suppressed the epochs themselves. The small golden coffin shone with dazzling radiance. Its brilliance could rival the very sun behind it. The instant it emerged, the entire world went silent. Even the Skyburial Buddha's brows furrowed slightly. The coffin lid opened slowly, and a figure drifted up from within. I've heard the Buddha excels in deliverance, a calm, amused voice said. Why not? Deliver me as well. Though his tone was light, the sound echoed across the heavens. No one dared to answer. All eyes turned toward the figure. He wore only a thin golden robe. Though he appeared to be an old man, his skin was pale and smooth, without a single wrinkle, like that of a youth barely past 10. Around his waist hung a chain of ancient gold coins, hundreds of them, surrounding him in a shimmering aura. Each coin was so old that the inscriptions had long since become unrecognizable. When the coins fall, heads will fall, said the Skyburial Buddha coldly. You are Blood-Eyed Situ Yun. Situ Yun. I haven't heard that name in ages, the old man replied with a chuckle. Call me whatever you like. Names mean little. The Skyburial Buddha gave a low snort but didn't argue further. Who is Situ Yun? Su Zimo asked curiously. He didn't know much about the 9 heavens. Many of the truly ancient powerhouses had long since withdrawn from the world. Hidden figures like this were beyond his knowledge. Blood-Eyed Situ Yun earned fame through that eye, Morong Ching explained. It's said that when he was born, there was a blood-red eye on his forehead. The night of his birth saw a crimson moon, and all manner of monsters appeared across the land. It was considered an ominous omen. His parents abandoned him, but he crawled out of a pile of corpses and survived. What happened in his early years, no one knows. But after he became a sage monarch, he suppressed the entire ghost god heaven. For 30 million years, the world lived under his terror. All of them are powerful names, Su Zimo said with a faint smile. But none compare to you, Morong Ching replied with a grin. Compared to the tales of the infernal lord, they're child's play. I'm not surprised the heavenly court could win over the Skyburial Buddha, Su Zimo said. But your radiant court doing the same, now that is interesting. I wonder what price you paid. Don't look at me, young Master Su, Morong Ching said. I may be a saintess, but there are things far beyond my reach. Su Zimo didn't press the question further. Do you think they'll actually fight? Morong Ching asked. I hope they do, Su Zimo replied with a smile. But unfortunately, the heavenly court won't. Why are you so certain? She pressed. Do you think our radiant court is stronger than the heavenly court? Do you want the truth? Su Zimo asked. Morong Ching nodded. If the heavenly court truly wished it, it could easily destroy your radiant court, Su Zimo said plainly. Morong Ching's heart trembled at those words. Though she held the title of saintess, she knew little about the heavenly court's true strength. They were far too mysterious and rarely appeared in the world. "Our radiant court has Lord Primordial Flame," she said stubbornly. "We wouldn't be so easily destroyed. If they can destroy you, then why did you say they wouldn't start a war?" "Because this is the Nine Heavens," Suzimo replied calmly. "And your radiant court isn't the only ancient power here." He smiled. "Even if someone wanted to destroy you, others would intervene." Murongqing frowned slightly. "Who would protect us? With our strength, who could possibly need to?" "Let me put it this way," Suzimo said. "In the Nine Heavens, apart from the lower mortal Ascension Heaven and the God-fiend Abyss Heaven, each of the other 7 realms has a ruling power, just as your radiant court rules the Inferno Crucible Heaven. Among them, the Heavenly Court is by far the strongest. But the other 6 realms' powers, though they don't say it openly, have formed a quiet alliance. If the Heavenly Court strikes, it won't just face the Radiant Court but all the other realms. So the Heavenly Court will either not act at all, or it will act to sweep through the entire 9 heavens in one go. That's why I said, there won't be a war. Not yet. The Heavenly Court isn't ready." Murongqing smiled faintly. "You sees things quite clearly. You've even managed to drag our Radiant Court into this to keep yourself safe." "You might not believe me," Suzimo said with a shrug, "but getting the Radiant Court involved was an accident. Before I came to the Lotus Pathway, I didn't even know the Inferno Crucible envoy was you." "So you mean to say," Murongqing said, narrowing her eyes, "that even if the Radiant Court weren't here, you could still leave safely?" Suzimo only smiled and said nothing. "Some things," he said lightly, "are better left unknown." He looked back at the battlefield. "It's about to get even livelier." Murongqing knew he wouldn't answer and didn't push further. At that moment, in the heavens above, the Sky Burial Buddha and Situ Yun stood facing each other silently. Neither moved, neither spoke. The Radiant Court wouldn't start a war, not unless the Heavenly Court tore the veil completely. And that kind of rupture wouldn't just mean a battle. It would mean a war of annihilation. As for the Heavenly Court, they too seemed to be weighing their options. Finally, after a long silence, the Sky Burial Buddha spoke. "Situ Yun, the Lord of Heaven of our Heavenly Court wishes to speak with you." Situ Yun smiled faintly. "An honor indeed." Suddenly, divine power erupted from the holy temple. From the distant heavens, a vast projection descended, a vision cast from the faraway calamity immortal realm, crossing endless time and space. Slowly, within the light and immortal mist, a throne took form. The throne was shrouded in celestial mist. It faced away from the crowd, and the figure seated upon it was veiled, his true face hidden from view. Even so, from the outline of his back alone, it was as if he bore the heavens on his shoulders and tread upon the earth beneath his feet. All the power and order of the world seemed to center upon him. Just that single silhouette made hearts tremble. None dared to look directly at him. A sense of awe and submission rose instinctively in everyone's soul. "The Lord of Heaven," someone murmured. "The man who has ruled the Heavenly Court for 300 million years. The one who once commanded the entire 9 heavens. He might not compare to the holy progenitor, nor could he be placed alongside the immortal Lord. Yet those 2 figures had long since withdrawn from worldly affairs, seldom appearing or intervening. Only the Lord of Heaven, this man seated upon the celestial throne, held dominion openly. Under his leadership, the Heavenly Court had grown ever stronger over 300 million years. His contribution was immeasurable. For the Lord of Heaven to manifest, that was something that hadn't happened in countless ages. From his throne in the Heavenly Court, he overlooked all the realms. Even Situ Yun's expression hardened slightly as he said, "I wonder what the Lord of Heaven seeks from me?" A majestic voice rolled out from the heavens. "If your Radiant Court withdraws from this affair, the Heavenly Court shall owe you a great debt. One day, should you ever have need, the Heavenly Court will not refuse. When the day comes that my Heavenly Court reigns over the 9 heavens, I shall ensure your Radiant Court retains a piece of land of their own." The words struck like thunder. Everyone who heard them was stunned. Such a promise was far too great. It wasn't merely a favor, It was a vow of protection. If the heavenly court were ever to rule the 9 heavens, every other faction would either perish or submit. And yet, the radiant court was promised the right to remain untouched. The heavenly court had never made such concessions. Not once in its long history had it compromised. But now it had. The heavenly court itself had extended goodwill, all to destroy Suzimo and annihilate the ancient demon race. I wondered who it was. Red Blade Bull Demon sneered, lifting his head. So it's you, Wang Buxiu. Do you remember when my ancient demon race's guardian demon gods chased you across the 9 heavens like a dog without a home? Have you forgotten that fear? Red Blade Bull Demon had lived through the demon descent era, so of course he recognized the man. The Lord of Heaven's true name was Wang Buxiu, though now, few dared to speak it aloud. All addressed him by his current title, Lord of Heaven. Back then, Wang Buxiu was not yet Grand Emperor. During the Great War between the ancient demon race and the heavenly court, he was known for his ferocity in battle, until he drew the attention of the Infernal Lord himself. It was said the Infernal Lord sent the demon god guardians to hunt him across heaven and earth. The battle only ended when the Holy Progenitor personally intervened. That had been the most humiliating defeat of Wang Buxiu's life, a battle no one dared mention. But now, hearing the bull demon's words, Lord of Heaven's gaze remained calm. He merely said, "You ancient demons of today are but worthless insects crawling in the mud, unworthy even to kneel before me." Suzimo smiled faintly. "If I chose to kill you," he said, "even the Holy Progenitor could not save you. But you aren't worth it." He was right. The man before him wasn't worthy of invoking the full power of the Infernal Lord. Lord of Heaven's expression did not change. His face betrayed neither anger nor joy. If he felt anything, no one could tell. He turned his gaze to Situ Yun. "What of my offer? If you cannot decide, you may deliver it to the Radiant Court." "There's no need, Lord of Heaven," Situ Yun replied, shaking his head. "There is nothing to discuss today. The Lotus Pathway belongs to the Radiant Court." It was clear he had resolved to protect Suzimo. "In that case," said Lord of Heaven coldly, "we fight." With a wave of his right hand, a divine decree manifested across the heavens. It was like an imperial edict, an order of absolute authority, the decree of heaven. Few in all the 9 heavens dared defy such a decree. On it was written a single word: slay. The character glowed crimson, emanating a deadly majesty. As the decree descended, it transformed into a sword of celestial energy, a divine blade sharper than any mortal weapon. The void itself split before it like soft tofu. Its edge was so keen that to merely look upon it filled one with dread, making the scalp prickle and the blood run cold. The celestial blade came down upon Suzimo with unstoppable force. At that moment, Situ Yun snorted coldly and thrust out his hand to intercept it. "Situ Yun, your opponent is me," the Sky Burial Buddha said, stepping in front of him. As the blade sliced downward, Paimon and the others started forward to shield Suzimo, but he stopped them with a smile. "No need. Let it strike." Suzimo smiled calmly. "If this blade falls, the Radiant Court will lose all face. Surely they didn't bring only these few people today." As his words fell, a deafening boom echoed through the sky. A bolt of lightning flashed from the void, striking the celestial blade squarely. With another crash, the divine weapon bent under the impact, its path veering just enough to miss Suzimo by a hair's breadth. But upon closer look, that lightning wasn't lightning at all. It was an arrow, glowing violet, loosed from 1,000,000 miles away. "Who dares defy a heavenly decree?" the Holy Elder roared furiously. Everyone turned toward the horizon. There, a man approached step by step. He carried a quiver of arrows upon his back and held in his hand a great bow of heaven and earth. His gaze was as sharp as an arrow's point, piercing all things. The aura around him was taut like a drawn bowstring, ready to unleash destruction at any moment. No one spoke, except Suzimo, who frowned slightly and muttered under his breath, "Grand Emperor Chong Kong." Bailey Chong Kong, founder of the Bailey imperial clan on the primordial heartlands, the family of Bailey Shao. Su Zimo himself had once destroyed that clan with his own hands. Now, to encounter its ancient ancestor here, it was awkward, to say the least. Grand Emperor Chong Kong had long since ascended to Sage Monarch. His overwhelming aura commanded respect. Grand Emperors from the primordial heartlands were never ordinary. Even here, in the Nine Heavens, they remained among the most formidable of powers, the pillars of this world. "This is your radiant courts man?" Su Zimo asked, glancing at Murong Qing. "Yes," she admitted openly. The divine sword shattered, and Lord of Heaven's tone turned cold. "Your radiant court grows ever more insolent. Please return, Lord of Heaven," Emperor Chong Kong said calmly as he walked through the air. "The holy progenitor once showed great kindness to your primordial heartlands," Lord of Heaven replied. "And yet, after all these years, not one of your so-called grand emperors has chosen to join the heavenly court." His tone carried something strange, whether disdain or frustration. No one could tell. But Emperor Chong Kong's expression remained serene. He said nothing, waiting silently for Lord of Heaven's next words. None came. The immortal mist thickened once more, and Lord of Heaven's projection began to fade. "Infernal Lord." His voice echoed faintly as it vanished into the void. "We will meet again." Lord of Heaven's figure gradually faded away, and the immense pressure that had loomed over everyone's heads finally began to dissipate. As he vanished, Situ Yun turned toward the Sky Burial Buddha and smiled. "Sky Burial, do you need me to see you off?" The tone made the Sky Burial Buddha's face darken. His eyes burned like torches as he cast a deep look at Su Zimo. "Benefactor," he said solemnly, "turn back before it's too late." "Buddha, are you trying to enlighten me?" Su Zimo asked with a faint smile. "I'm not enlightening you," the monk replied, shaking his head. "I am enlightening evil. Some things," he said quietly, "are doomed before they even begin." Su Zimo chuckled. "You're quite the joker, Buddha. How can you talk about endings when the beginning hasn't even started?" "That's because you don't know what you're truly facing," the Sky Burial Buddha said, unwilling to continue further. "I know," Su Zimo said, his tone calm, "and I know far better than you. After all, I have once waged war against the heavens themselves. You, on the other hand, are but an ant crawling beneath the sky. Do you really think you're qualified to lecture me?" The Sky Burial Buddha said nothing more. He turned the rosary around his neck, and a red glow enveloped his body before he slowly faded into the void. The holy temple lifted off once more, departing with the holy elder. Thus, the feud between the radiant court and the heavenly court was sealed. Everyone knew that, with these two colossal powers, there would never be small skirmishes. When they fought, one side would surely be destroyed. But that was no longer Su Zimo's concern. After the Sky Burial Buddha left, Situ Yun lay back into his coffin again, uninterested in the rest. Soon, the Light Lord Sage Monarch descended from the void. He first bowed to Murong Qing. "Greetings, Saintess." Though he was the lord of a branch of the Radiant Court, the Saintess's status was technically higher, for Murong Qing was destined to inherit leadership of the entire Radiant Court one day. "There's no need to be so formal, Sage Monarch," Murong Qing said with a wave of her hand. Turning to Su Zimo, the Sage Monarch smiled. "So you're young Master Su. Truly, a hero in his youth." "I thought your Radiant Court would back down," Su Zimo said bluntly. The Sage Monarch smiled awkwardly. "This was the ancestors' will. To be honest, if it were up to me, I wouldn't have opposed the heavenly court." He meant every word. Had it been his choice, he would have yielded. But when the Grand Ancestor gave an order, no one in the entire Radiant Court dared to disobey. As they spoke, Emperor Chong Kong also descended from the heavens. "You're from the primordial heartlands?" Emperor Chong Kong asked, his gaze fixed on Su Zimo. He seemed to know a bit about him already. "Just so you know, I destroyed the Bailey Imperial clan," Su Zimo said plainly. Emperor Chong Kong was silent for a moment. Finally, he said quietly, "I see. That is unfortunate. Descendants have their own fate. I stopped concerning myself with such matters long ago. Oh, I thought you'd come seeking revenge, Su Zimo said with a smile. If I came for revenge, Emperor Chong Kong replied, I wouldn't be here carrying out the ancestors' command to ask for your help. At the level of a sage monarch, such sentiments as family hatred or affection faded into insignificance. All that mattered was pursuing the infinite Tao realm, climbing ever higher toward the ultimate peak. Young Master Su, the sage monarch asked, would you consider coming to the Radiant Court? Don't dance around it, Su Zimo said, waving his hand. What message did your ancestor send for me? The sage monarch gave a sheepish smile. As expected, nothing escapes you, young Master Su. The ancestor said, this time you owe him a favor. You'll have to repay it someday. Tell him it's a small favor, Su Zimo said evenly. If it's within my power, I'll do it. But if it's too much, I won't force myself. He didn't speak harshly, but the meaning was clear. The Radiant Court had indeed helped relieve some of the pressure from the Heavenly Court. But this wasn't a life-saving favor. At best, it was a timely assist, not a rescue in crisis. The previous generation's infernal lord had been cunning indeed, hiding his inheritance in a forsaken land where no one could find it. That secrecy had kept the Heavenly Court from uncovering Su Zimo's true hand. Hey! Murong Qing's voice interrupted his thoughts. Looking at Su Zimo, she said, you helped me this time, I owe you one. When we reach the Inferno Crucible Heaven, I'll look out for you. Su Zimo chuckled. Sure. Then if I get into trouble, I'll just use your name. Our saintess is joking, the Light Lord Sage Monarch said quickly, wearing a strained smile before Murong Qing could reply. If anyone else had said that, it might have been fine. But Su Zimo's troubles were not something Murong Qing could handle. In any case, Murong Qing said, undeterred, you're not bad at all. But the Inferno Crucible Heaven isn't like the God-fiend Abyss Heaven. It's filled with far more powerful beings. Some of them don't even take our Radiant Court seriously. You'd best be careful. Saintess, it's time to leave, the Sage Monarch reminded her. He clearly didn't want her entangled with Su Zimo any further. Su Zimo was like a massive sun, and their Radiant Court a small planet. If they got tied to him, they might be dragged into storms far beyond their reach. He preferred stability. Relax, Light Lord. Don't be so nervous, Su Zimo said with a grin. To be honest, aside from your ancestor, there's no one in your Radiant Court I really care to know. My ship isn't one just anyone can board. Yes, yes, of course, the Sage Monarch replied with a polite smile, offering no argument, though his thoughts were his own. I'll be going then, Murong Qing said, bidding Su Zimo farewell. She had hoped to form some connection with him, but Su Zimo didn't seem interested, and the Radiant Court didn't approve anyway. The Radiant Court's group departed together, but Su Zimo didn't follow. He was headed for the Inferno Crucible Heaven, not the Radiant Court. Murong Qing left with the Light God Temple, while Su Zimo watched them disappear into the distance. Then he instructed Paimon and the others to return to the God world. Now only Violet Mist Saint Sovereign and Moonlight Fairy remained at his side. To the Inferno Crucible Heaven, then? Violet Mist Saint Sovereign asked. What will you two do once we get there? Su Zimo asked in return. We'll explore and see more of this vast world, Violet Mist said with a smile. Nothing wrong with broadening one's horizons. And you, young Master Su? Seek out the other ancient god inheritances, Su Zimo replied lightly. And maybe find a few old acquaintances. His main goal was to gather all the ancient gods' inheritances, and perhaps find whether the grand emperors of the true martial sacred ground were here. Once they reached the Inferno Crucible Heaven, it was likely they would go their separate ways. I'll go with you, Moonlight Fairy suddenly said. Her words startled even Su Zimo. You want to follow me? He asked. She nodded calmly. Why? The Heavenly Court wants you dead, she said. That means they fear you. The Radiant Court chose to protect you, that means they value you. Isn't that reason enough? You'd better think carefully, Suzimo said with a faint smile. Following me means living on the edge of death. And as for the future, truthfully, I take it one step at a time. Master Su, how about counting me in as well? At that moment, Violet Mist stepped forward with a smile. You want to follow me too? Suzimo raised an eyebrow. That's right. And your reason? Is it the same as hers? Me? I'm just bored of living, he said, still smiling. There's little left in this world that holds my interest. So I'll follow you, to see more of this world's brilliance before it all ends. If you're tired of life, why did you go through so much trouble to resurrect yourself in the first place? Suzimo asked skeptically. At the time, I didn't understand. I only wanted to live again. Violet Mist Saint Sovereign smiled faintly. Then I met you and thought, if death is inevitable, why not die for something weighty? Something that matters? Besides, after offending the heavenly court, I'm sure in their eyes, I'm already one of your accomplices. I think that last part is the real truth, Suzimo said with a chuckle. Indeed, all of them had completely offended the heavenly court. Even if Violet Mist didn't side with Suzimo, he would still be hunted. Since that was inevitable, it made more sense to stay with him. Violet Mist Saint Sovereign smiled again without denying it. Fine then, Suzimo nodded. 2 followers for free, no reason to refuse. Let's head for the Inferno Crucible Heaven. I've heard spatial transmission to the Inferno Crucible Heaven isn't like the others, said Violet Mist Saint Sovereign. Once we enter, we won't all end up in the same place. After all, this was an interdomain transmission. Unless they had an established spatial coordinate on the other side, like the Radiant Court did, they couldn't guarantee a single arrival point. Suzimo and his companions could end up scattered anywhere, each in a different region. That's fine, Suzimo said calmly. Wherever you land, just ask around about the ancient gods. We'll likely meet again at one of their inheritance sites. That's true, Violet Mist Saint Sovereign replied with a light laugh. Knowing you, once you arrive in the Inferno Crucible Heaven, you'll probably make a name for yourself soon enough. Finding you won't be hard. Suzimo smiled. The 3 of them arrived before the portal, a massive formation reinforced by immense spirit energy. The Hua Heavenly Clan had been annihilated, and Suzimo now possessed all their reserves accumulated over 1,000,000 years which he stored in the God world. With a wave of his hand, millions of spirit crystals floated into the air, slotting themselves into the intricate formation. Instantly, a deep rumbling echoed all around. Endless spirit energy surged into the formation like a storm. The sound of crystals cracking filled the air as countless shards dissolved into pure energy, feeding the portal. In less than 10 minutes, the entire passageway roared to life. Standing within the formation, the 3 were engulfed by a powerful suction force and vanished. This was the largest-scale spatial transmission Suzimo had ever experienced. The space around him warped endlessly. Nothing was visible, and his body felt as though it were being torn apart. Such strain could only be endured by a grand emperor. Ordinary cultivators without special means would be ripped to pieces. That tearing sensation lasted for over 10 days. By the end, Suzimo was completely numb. Finally, his body grew lighter, as if he'd pierced through a thin membrane, crossing from one world into another. The air around him burned with scorching heat. Suzimo knew immediately he had arrived in the Inferno Crucible Heaven. But even after entering the Inferno Crucible Heaven, the spatial transmission didn't end. The surrounding forces softened, proof that he had successfully broken through the great barrier between the 2 heavens. Where this lingering current would take him next, Suzimo didn't know. He didn't care either. The 9 heavens were not his home. He was rootless here with only his mission to guide him. It didn't matter where he ended up. At last, after an unknown passage of time, Suzimo slowly opened his eyes. Voices reached his ears. Who's this guy? He just fell from the sky. Maybe from another tribe? Never seen that face before. Didn't the Chaos Fire God Realm issue a warning recently? Water beasts have been raging. Better stay alert. Hey, you think he might be one of those water beasts in disguise? Trying to infiltrate our Firebane city. While they whispered, someone suddenly stiffened, their face paling. The second miss of the Fire Crow Manor is here. Run! Before the echo faded, everyone surrounding Suzimo vanished in a blink. Their speed was astonishing. Only then did Suzimo open his eyes fully. He felt weak not from injury, but from the toll of crossing the realms. His body was still adjusting to the pressure and heat of this new world. The Inferno Crucible Heaven truly lived up to its name, a world of flame and heat. Suzimo began converting his internal energy into the primal Tao of fire, using it to repair and stabilize his body. Bit by bit, he adapted to the fiery aura. When he looked up, a young face appeared before his eyes. It belonged to a girl barely in her teens. She wore a black crow-patterned robe and looked at him with an air of practiced arrogance. She circled him twice before declaring, "This one will do. Take him back to the manor." Suzimo felt several people lift him onto a stretcher and carry him away. After some time, as his strength began to return, he managed to ask, "Who are you people? Where are you taking me?" The little girl straightened proudly. "I'm the second miss of the Black Crow Tao Court. From today onward, you're my husband. I'm taking you back to marry me." Suzimo blinked. "You haven't even grown all your feathers yet, and you're talking about marriage?" he said dryly. "With that face, you're barely qualified to be my maid." The girl froze for a moment, her expression shifting rapidly. Her chest heaved as anger flashed in her eyes. "What's wrong? Did I hit a nerve?" Suzimo teased. To his surprise, the girl suddenly broke into a bright smile. "I know you're trying to provoke me, but it won't work. The more you resist, the more determined I am to marry you," she said cheerfully. Suzimo sighed helplessly. What a pain in the ass. He could barely move. Being able to speak was already pushing his limits. For now, he could only let her have her way. The stretcher carried him through the streets. Suzimo noticed something odd. Everywhere they passed, people scattered instantly. The moment they saw the girls' group, they bolted like they were avoiding a plague. Finally, they arrived at a grand estate. An enormous plaque above the gate read Black Crow Tao Court, with a carved image of a crow beside it. Inside, Suzimo was placed in a courtyard while everyone else withdrew. Everyone except the overbearing young girl. She stood before him, grinning smugly. "Are you afraid?" she asked sweetly. "What's there to be afraid of? Even if we become intimate today, I'd still be the one taking advantage," Suzimo said with a relaxed smile. "But you're too young. I'd worry you couldn't handle it." Hearing that, the overbearing little girl's face flushed slightly. She snorted coldly. "Looks like you've never heard my name before. You're not from Firebane City, are you?" "Firebane City," Suzimo murmured. He wasn't very familiar with the Inferno Crucible Heaven, but this city might serve as a good place to start gathering information. "Are you famous, then?" Suzimo asked casually, following her lead. "Of course I am. There isn't a single person in Firebane City who doesn't know the name Bienyu," the girl said proudly. "Oh? Then tell me a bit about this place," Suzimo replied. "This is Firebane City," she began. "It's built over the marshlands and governed by the Chaos Fire God realm. There are 17 million cities like Firebane across the region." Halfway through her explanation, Bienyu suddenly realized what she was doing. Her eyes narrowed. "Wait, why should I tell you any of this? Don't think you can trick me into revealing information." She squinted at him suspiciously. "Are you an infiltrator sent by the water beasts?" "Yep," Suzimo said with a smirk. "You just caught me." Bienyu snorted again, just about to retort when heavy footsteps sounded from outside the courtyard. A group of people entered. Leading them was a stern-looking middle-aged man. He too wore the black crow robes of the manor, with sharp eyes and a neatly trimmed beard. His face was so severe that a single glance could make one straighten up instinctively. "Second uncle," Bienyu said quickly, her tone instantly more restrained. "Little you, what kind of nonsense are you up to now?" The man scolded even before reaching them. How could a stranger just walk into the Black Crow Dao court? Second uncle. Bian Yu's confidence faltered a little under his gaze. Who are you? The middle-aged man demanded, staring down at Su Zimo. He's my fiancé, Bian Yu said before Su Zimo could open his mouth. Though clearly nervous, she forced herself to stand her ground. Your marriage has already been arranged. It's not your decision to make, the man said coldly, frowning. I've already told father that if I'm forced into that marriage, I'll end my life right in front of him. Bian Yu snapped back, her stubbornness flaring. I know what you said, her uncle replied grimly. But do you really think you can just bring home some random man and expect us to approve a marriage? That's for my father to decide, not you, Bian Yu shot back. Her uncle's eyes darkened, but he said no more. The argument had already crossed the line. He turned his gaze to Su Zimo and said in a cold, threatening tone, If I were you, I'd leave immediately. Get involved in the Black Crow Dao court's affairs, and you might not even have a body left to bury. I wasn't interested before, Su Zimo said with a faint smile. But now that you've threatened me, I'm starting to get curious. The man's expression turned even uglier. Without another word, he gestured to his followers. We're leaving. They came swiftly and left just as fast. Bian Yu exhaled deeply once they were gone. Though she just stood up to her uncle, that courage had been fleeting. Now that the tension was gone, a hint of fear crept back into her eyes. Thanks, she said quietly, glancing at Su Zimo. After all, he hadn't backed down. He'd stood by her side, even if unintentionally. No need to thank me. I didn't do it for you, Su Zimo replied, shaking his head. He sat up from the stretcher. After this period of rest, his body was recovered enough to move freely again. In a few more days, his strength would likely return completely. Seeing him sit up, Bian Yu was startled. She had assumed he was badly injured and could barely move. What's wrong? Where'd that fierce attitude of yours go? Su Zimo said with a lazy wave of his hand. Now be a good girl and bring me something to eat and some clean clothes. I'm taking a bath. You sure act like you own the place, Bian Yu muttered, pouting. But she didn't refuse. She ordered a servant to make the arrangements. Listen, girl, Su Zimo said calmly. Serve me well, and if I'm in a good mood, maybe I'll help solve that little marriage problem of yours. You think I actually want to marry you? Bian Yu huffed. Even if we do get married, it's just for show to get through the moment. Afterward, we'll go our separate ways. You little firebrand, Su Zimo chuckled. Soon, servants brought clean clothes and a bath. Su Zimo washed up and changed into fresh clothes. When he emerged, his long black hair tied into a bun, his features sharp as if carved by a blade, deep eyes, a handsome face full of demonic charm, and a tall, muscular body. For a moment, even Bian Yu was stunned. Maybe marrying him wouldn't be so bad, she murmured under her breath. What was that? Su Zimo's voice cut in suddenly. And nothing, Bian Yu stammered, quickly waving her hands. I'm going to talk to my father about this. You stay here in the courtyard. Don't wander off. I'd like to take a stroll through Firebane City, Su Zimo said casually. There's nothing worth seeing, Bian Yu grumbled. Then she called toward the gate, and a young maid entered. The girl was pretty, dressed in a light green robe, with 2 small braids tied neatly atop her head. This is my maid, little Jade. If you insist on going out, she'll accompany you, Bian Yu instructed. With that, she left to take care of her own matters. There was much to handle after Su Zimo's sudden arrival. Su Zimo didn't mind. He lounged in the pavilion, taking in the view. The courtyard was beautiful, filled with flowers and birdsong, more like a peaceful garden than a warrior's home. Though the Inferno Crucible heaven was scorching hot, a few cool breezes drifted through the courtyard, keeping it surprisingly pleasant. Master, little Jade said softly, standing nearby. How much do you know about this area? Su Zimo asked. This area? Little Jade looked puzzled, unsure how large a scope he meant. You know about the Chaos Fire God realm, right? He asked. Of course, she replied with relief. All our cities are under the Chaos Fire God Realm's authority. And outside the Chaos Fire God Realm? Su Zimo pressed. I've never left it, little Jade admitted honestly. But I've heard there are 7 vast regions in total across the Inferno Crucible Heaven. The Chaos Fire God Realm lies in the northwest in one of those regions. At the very center are the Radiant Lands, and the other 6 surround it. The Radiant Court must be located in the Radiant Lands. Then, Su Zimo nodded. Exactly, little Jade said. Then she tilted her head curiously at him. All of this was common knowledge, yet Su Zimo seemed utterly clueless. The maid even began to suspect that her young lady had brought home a fool for a husband. Have you ever heard of the ancient gods? Su Zimo asked, unwilling to give up. His goal was to find the inheritance of the ancient gods. If he could get a lead, it would save him from wandering around aimlessly like a headless fly. What are ancient gods? Little Jade asked, puzzled. Well, that won't be easy then, Su Zimo sighed. Still, he decided to stay at the Black Crow Dao Court for a while before heading to the main city of the Chaos Fire God Realm to look for clues. If that yielded nothing, he would have to inquire at the Radiant Court itself. The pressure from the Heavenly Court was mounting, and he needed to summon back the ancient demon race soon. By now, night had fallen. Su Zimo stopped thinking about it, went back to his prepared room, and slept soundly through the night. The next morning, when he stepped outside, little Jade had already set out breakfast for him. Let's go take a look around Fire Bane City today, Su Zimo said with a smile. Second young miss instructed that you should avoid going out these days, little Jade said hesitantly. Oh? You're teaching me what to do now. Su Zimo gave her a sidelong glance. Careful. Once I become your lady's husband, you'll be my chambermaid. I'd never share a chamber with you. Little Jade's face flushed crimson. But she couldn't bring herself to stop him either. So she reluctantly accompanied Su Zimo out of the Black Crow Dao Court to explore Fire Bane City. Fire Bane City was bustling and prosperous. The streets teemed with people coming and going. But Su Zimo knew that these so-called people were not actually human in the strict sense. They were elementals of the fire god race. Their appearance was nearly indistinguishable from humans, so it wasn't obvious at a glance. There were a few humans living in the Inferno Crucible Heaven, but they were a small minority. This was, after all, a world ruled by fire. The air shimmered with heat and flames, and, most strikingly, this world had 7 suns. That's right, 7 suns blazed across the sky at once. It was easy to see why this world was so unbearably hot. 7 burning suns hung high overhead, and even Su Zimo occasionally had to wipe away sweat. Is there anywhere interesting in Fire Bane City? Su Zimo asked. What does young master mean by interesting? Little Jade thought for a moment, and then her face turned pink. She stammered, Young master, you're about to marry my lady. Could you not restrain yourself a little? What are you talking about? Su Zimo asked, baffled. Little Jade seemed a bit flustered, perhaps even annoyed. She walked ahead to lead the way but ignored him after that. Eventually, the two of them arrived at a more secluded part of the city. Little Jade pointed ahead and said quietly, I won't accompany you any further. Be sure to come back early tonight. Su Zimo froze. He looked in the direction she was pointing, only to see a grand brothel standing there. Plump, well-dressed men came and went at the entrance, while heavily made-up ladies leaned from the second-floor balcony, waving and calling down flirtatiously. I asked you to take me somewhere interesting, and you brought me to a brothel? Su Zimo said, stunned. He quickly realized she had misunderstood his meaning. What? Isn't this what men mean when they say, somewhere interesting? Little Jade huffed. Geez, you've really got me wrong, Su Zimo said with mock disappointment. I'm known as the White Dragon of the Waves. A true gentleman who stays pure even in temptation. If you don't believe me, you could strip down and try to seduce me. I promise I won't budge. You think I'm that kind of person? He added with exaggerated hurt. Little Jade blinked, startled by his sincerity, and began to wonder if maybe she really had misjudged him. But before she could apologize, a sudden commotion erupted in the distance. The shouting was so loud and chaotic that she couldn't make out the words. Dozens of people came running toward them in panic. A moment later, the ground began to shake violently, the earth trembling beneath their feet as if the entire city of Fire Bane were about to collapse. "What's happening?" Su Zimo asked. Little Jade seemed to guess the cause. "Water beasts," she said. As soon as she spoke, she broke into a run toward the city wall. Su Zimo, curious about these so-called water beasts, followed after her. The tremors grew stronger as they reached the wall. Thousands of people had already gathered there. "The water beasts are attacking again." "Yes, it's been happening more and more often these past few months. I'm sick of it already. What can we do? At this rate, Fire Bane City won't be able to hold out much longer." "Don't talk nonsense. As long as the Black Crow Emperor stands, those water beasts are nothing to fear. I'm not afraid of the small ones, but what if stronger ones show up? How do we stop them then? The Chaos Fire God realm still hasn't sent reinforcements." The crowd buzzed with tense discussion. From what he overheard, Su Zimo quickly understood the situation. He and Little Jade squeezed through the crowd until they reached the top of the wall. Looking out over the vast plains, he saw dust rising on the horizon, like the earth itself was cracking open. A massive horde of beasts was charging straight toward the city. Each creature's body gleamed with an eerie blue sheen, and together they surged forward like a boundless ocean. It was as if a tidal wave were crashing through the heavens, threatening to swallow the very sky. Individually, these water beasts weren't particularly strong, but their numbers were staggering, and water and fire were natural enemies. The fire god race despised water more than anything. Su Zimo even thought to himself that perhaps the fire god race never took baths at all. "This looks bad," Little Jade murmured. "What exactly are these water beasts?" Su Zimo asked. He was new to the Inferno Crucible Heaven and didn't yet understand its conflicts. "They're our greatest enemies," Little Jade explained. "For countless ages, we've destroyed them over and over again, but never completely. They always return. In recent years, they've grown stronger. It's said that one of the 7 fire regions, the Departure Fire region, has already fallen to them. Now they're trying to invade the Chaos Fire God realm, and Fire Bane City is the first line of defense." "How do water beasts even exist here?" Su Zimo asked, narrowing his eyes. In a place like the Inferno Crucible Heaven, with 7 suns blazing in the sky, it should have been impossible for water-based life to survive. "I don't know," Little Jade said, shaking her head. "Some say it's heaven's punishment. All I know is that they've been around since before I was born." Su Zimo said nothing, but his mind was racing. He was thinking of things, dark, troubling possibilities. While they spoke, the water beasts drew closer, now less than 2 kilometers from the city. Within Fire Bane City, the fire god race had already assembled. Thousands of warriors clad in red armor stood ready at the city gate. At their head was a handsome young man wearing a white dragon-scaled cuirass, a demon-slaying sword at his waist, and a fierce aura rolling off him like a blazing tide. Before him, the massive city gates began to open slowly. The young man clad in silver dragon armor gazed coldly into the distance. As the gates opened, the thousands of fire god race soldiers behind him surged forward. The charging water beasts met them head-on in a ferocious clash. "Who is that?" Su Zimo asked, watching the young man. "That's Mu Qingyun, the great general of Fire Bane City," Little Jade explained. "Don't be fooled by his youth. He's already at the peak of the God Meridian realm. People say he's the one most likely to ascend to Grand Emperor someday. Every time our city has faced the attacks of the water beasts, he's been the one leading the defense." Su Zimo nodded, his deep eyes watching the battlefield beyond the city walls, as if seeing through the endless void. He then said slowly, "They're going to lose." "Lose? What do you mean?" Little Jade asked, confused. But before she could get an answer, the battle outside had already shifted. Though the fire god race's soldiers fought valiantly, the water beasts outnumbered them several times over. They had managed to hold their ground only because Mu Qingyun's strength was overwhelming. He could face 10,000 enemies alone. This time, however, a massive blue-eyed water beast suddenly burst out from the ranks of the enemy. The thick aura of imperial power emanating from its body made everyone pale. The creature stretched over 10,000 meters long, its body covered in countless blue bumps, as if rivers of water flowed beneath its skin. It attacked with unstoppable force, nearly overwhelming Mu Qingyun in mere moments. Water could be both soft and unyielding. It could redirect strength, or surge forth like a tide that never repeated itself. "What do we do now?" The crowd atop the city wall cried as the fire god race forces began to retreat in disformation. "Master Zimo, let's go back to the mansion first," little Jade said anxiously, her voice trembling. The sight of the rampaging beasts terrified her. Only the Black Crow Dao Court could offer a sense of safety now. "What's the rush?" Su Zimo waved his hand calmly. "I'm actually thinking of catching one of those beasts for research. Please, Master, don't do something reckless. I won't be able to explain it to the second miss." Su Zimo didn't reply. His eyes narrowed as he looked toward the battlefield below. Mu Qingyun's silver dragon sword flashed with every strike, white dragons swirling in its wake. His moves were sharp and refined, his movements nimble and precise. But the blue-eyed water beast, relying purely on its overwhelming power, met each blow head-on. Within a dozen exchanges, Mu Qingyun was already being driven back. He turned toward the city wall and shouted, "Quick! Send for the Black Crow Dao Court. Qingyun, my good nephew, allow me to assist." As the words echoed through the air, an old man suddenly appeared above the battlefield, walking on air. "It's Skyblade Lu Xingyun," someone cried out in excitement. "Lu Xingyun, the wandering cultivator. He's been famous for centuries. Recently he's been staying in Fire Bane City and was recruited by the Black Crow Dao Court as a guest elder," another person explained. If he was acting, that meant the Black Crow Dao Court was officially intervening. For the people of Fire Bane City, the Black Crow Dao Court was untouchable, a force far above them. Normally, the mansion never involved itself in city affairs, but in times of great peril, it would lend its strength. Lu Xingyun's arrival revealed his true identity, a Grand Emperor. And of course, only those at the Grand Emperor level were qualified to serve as guest elders of the Black Crow Dao Court. With Lu Xingyun joining the fight, the balance immediately shifted. The blue-eyed water beast, which had been dominating moments ago, was quickly suppressed. The fire god race forces rallied once again, regaining control of the battlefield. The fighting was brutal, and those watching from the city walls prayed silently. If Fire Bane City fell, they would lose their homes and be forced to wander as refugees. No one wanted that. Only Su Zimo stood relaxed, leaning against the wall and letting the wind blow through his robes. "You don't seem worried at all," little Jade said softly. Su Zimo merely smiled without answering. The cool wind lifted his sleeves as the crowd pressed together on the wall, trying to get a better view of the battle below. Then suddenly he felt a push. Someone was trying to shove him off the wall. Su Zimo turned his head, and the man behind him froze. When he tried to push Su Zimo, it had felt as though he were pushing against a mountain, completely immovable. "Hello there," the man said quickly, recovering with a forced smile. "Who sent you?" Su Zimo asked calmly. "I don't know what you're talking about, friend. We don't even know each other," the man stammered, still pretending to smile. Su Zimo didn't bother replying. He simply grabbed the man by the collar and lifted him effortlessly into the air. "I'll only ask once. If you don't answer, I'll throw you into that swarm of beasts down there." "Wait! Don't!" the man screamed, his face turning pale. "It was young Master Mu. He told me to get rid of you." "Young Master Mu?" Su Zimo glanced at little Jade. "Who's that?" Little Jade looked uncomfortable but explained nonetheless. "Mu Zhua, the second young master of the Mu Imperial clan. Their family's influence in Fire Bane City is second only to our Black Crow Dao Court. He's always admired the second Mississippi. I suppose this is about her." "A bunch of childish fools," Suzimo muttered, shaking his head. He then threw the man off the wall without hesitation. You said you wouldn't, the man shouted midair, his voice fading as he plummeted. He hit the water beast horde below without even causing a splash, disappearing instantly beneath the waves. Please, master, calm down, little Jade urged, trying to comfort him. The second miss will handle this matter. I am calm, Suzimo said with a small smile. These people aren't worth my anger. As they spoke, the battle below was drawing to a close. The water beast army began retreating. There was no real victor or loser. Both sides had suffered heavy losses. Still, relief spread across the faces of the Fire God race warriors. Fire Bane City had survived another siege. No one knew when the next attack would come, but for now they could finally breathe. Watching the beasts retreat, Suzimo decided he couldn't wait any longer. With a wave of his hand, the Codex of Life and Death appeared before him. He opened it, and two chains, one black, one white, shot out from its pages. The chains tore through the void like lightning, flying straight into the midst of the retreating beasts. They wrapped tightly around the blue-eyed water beast that had led the attack. The sudden turn of events drew everyone's attention. What in the world? Lu Xingyun and Mu Qingyun looked at each other in disbelief. The creature that even the two of them together couldn't subdue had been captured effortlessly by someone else. As the chains of life and death began retracting toward Suzimo, the water beast thrashed wildly in panic. But then the deathly energy emanating from the black chain surged outward, crushing its resistance. With a thunderous boom, the colossal blue-eyed water beast was dragged down and slammed onto the ground inside the city. The remaining beasts outside panicked and fled in every direction, terrified of sharing its fate. Suzimo ignored them. One blue-eyed water beast was enough for his research. Without paying any attention to little Jade's stunned expression, Suzimo grabbed the blue-eyed water beast and started heading back to the Black Crow Dao court. Aren't you coming? He called over his shoulder when he noticed her still standing there, dazed. Oh, coming. Little Jade hurried after him. Master, you really are full of surprises. Suzimo wasn't interested in showing off in front of her. What truly caught his attention was the water beast itself. He had realized that someone else was walking a similar path to his own, though not as far along. Back at the Black Crow Dao court, he returned to the courtyard where Bianyu lived. Little Jade immediately ran off to tell her mistress everything that had happened. So when Suzimo arrived, Bianyu appeared shortly after. I underestimated you, Bianyu said, circling him with a faint smile. But that's fine. My future husband can't be a mediocre man. Suzimo could only shake his head and chuckle. There was no possibility of anything between them. Even if he didn't refuse her, the Black Crow Dao court would never agree. Bianyu wasn't just anyone. She was the second miss of the house, a woman of noble status. Seeing his indifferent attitude, Bianyu frowned. You're coming with me this afternoon to meet the elders, she said. All right, Suzimo replied calmly. Don't embarrass me when we're there, she added. Don't worry. As long as I'm around, no one will dare to make things difficult for you. You're getting a bit full of yourself, she said, glaring at him. Learn to stay quiet. You talk too much, Suzimo replied casually. Humph. Bianyu huffed angrily before storming off. Suzimo didn't bother to stop her. His attention was fixed entirely on the blue-eyed water beast. He carried the creature back to his room and placed his right hand upon it. Streams of spirit energy flowed from his palm into the beast's body. At first, he was cautious, not wanting to ruin his research subject. But as the energy circulated, he quickly perceived the beast's internal structure. Water primal Dao pulsed and flowed throughout its body. To Suzimo's eyes, this creature wasn't truly a living being. It was an embodiment of primal Dao itself, a living manifestation of the Dao. He spent the entire afternoon studying it, and the insights he gained were immense. He could feel that his Sovereign Lord stage cultivation was inching even closer to the next stage, Saint Sovereign. Ordinarily, The first step toward becoming a saint sovereign was transforming one's essence into primal Tao. Su Zimo had already completed that transformation long ago. Now he was tempering those primal Tao, refining them until they became unbreakable. Just as a piece of impure iron must be forged countless times to become true divine steel, Su Zimo was hammering his own primal Tao to perfection. Among all cultivators at his level, his primal Tao had to be the purest and strongest. Once they were refined, he would face heavenly tribulation and become a supreme giant. But that refinement couldn't be forced, it could only happen through comprehension and insight. Observing the blue-eyed water beast was one such opportunity. Once he completely understood its nature, he knew he would gain enormously from it. And through this process he confirmed something. Someone else was walking the same path as he was, creating life. He himself had created an entire world, the God world, with its own primal Taos, creatures, and heavens. Whoever had made this water beast hadn't gone as far as he had, but they had still succeeded in creating a living being. This beast was one of those creations. That afternoon, Bian Yu arrived again to take him to meet her family's elders. Su Zimo didn't object. He had been at the Black Crow Tao court for days now, and it was time to meet its important figures. Perhaps he could even make use of the mansion's power to search for information about the ancient gods. Following Bian Yu, they made their way to the Black Crow Tao court's grand hall. Along the way, she whispered instructions and reminders about proper conduct. When they entered, the hall wasn't as solemn as he'd expected. Instead, a dozen banquet tables filled the room, covered with fine food and wine. In the center, dancers swayed gracefully to music, creating a scene of lively celebration. "Ah, Bian Yu, you're here," someone greeted as they entered. "Elder," Bian Yu said respectfully, bowing. "Sit," the elder said warmly. "We're celebrating today's victory against the water beasts. The lord of the mansion has arranged a feast." Bian Yu and Su Zimo were seated at the far left table. Su Zimo glanced up at the head of the hall, where the lord of the mansion, Bian Yu's father, sat. The man wore a high-collared black battle robe that exuded power and authority. His eyes were sharp and deep, like a hunter studying his prey. A black crow rested on his shoulder, its feathers blending seamlessly with his clothing, as if they were one and the same. "What's your father's name?" Su Zimo asked quietly. Bian Yu glared at him but still replied, "Bian Wenzhou." "Cool name," Su Zimo said with a small smile, before helping himself to the fruit on the table. "Today's victory against the water beasts is largely thanks to Qing Yun," someone said with a laugh. Mu Qingyun, the general of Fire Bane City, held great prestige second only to the Black Crow Tao court itself. "You flatter me," Mu Qingyun replied modestly. "We also owe much to fellow Taoist Lu Xingyun's assistance." The upper seats were filled with lively conversation. Su Zimo, however, kept to himself, until the Sky Blade, Lu Xingyun, approached him carrying a jug of wine. "So this is the second Mrs. Fiancé?" Lu Xingyun said with a grin, showing none of the arrogance typical of powerful cultivators. "We haven't gone through the ceremony yet, so I wouldn't say fiancé," Su Zimo replied lightly. "May I ask where you're from, young sir?" Lu Xingyun sat down beside him. "I've wandered the world. Anywhere can be home," Su Zimo answered. "Honestly, when I saw your power at the city gates earlier, capturing a grand emperor water beast without a struggle, I was shocked," Lu Xingyun said. "It was merely the power of a treasure," Su Zimo replied. He had used the Codex of Life and Death, and many on the walls had seen it. "Would you be interested in joining us as a guest elder of the Black Crow Tao court?" Lu Xingyun asked suddenly. Su Zimo frowned slightly. He doubted Lu Xingyun had the authority to make such an offer. It must have come from higher up. "I don't mind the idea," Su Zimo said after a moment, "but I'll agree only on one condition." "Oh? Please, speak. Help me find information about the ancient gods. If you can do that, I'll join as a guest elder. If not, then forget it." A guest elder position was, after all, a matter of mutual benefit. Lu Xingyun thought for a moment, then said, I believe the Black Crow Dao Court will give you a satisfactory answer. After Lu Xingyun finished speaking, he excused himself and left. He didn't have the authority to make that decision. The matter would ultimately require the approval of those behind him. Su Zimo continued drinking quietly. Suddenly, he sensed someone's gaze fixed on him. Looking up, he saw a young man seated among the upper ranks staring his way. The youth was handsome, dressed in a long robe embroidered with floral patterns, his black hair tied tightly in a high knot. There was a trace of gloom between his brows. Who's that guy? Su Zimo asked Bian Yu beside him. Mu Zhuo, Bian Yu replied, clearly displeased. The Black Crow Dao Court had originally wanted her to marry Mu Zhuo, the second son of the Mu imperial clan. His elder brother was none other than Mu Qingyun, the most renowned general in all of Firebane City. A marriage between their two houses would have been a perfect political alliance. But Bian Yu didn't like Mu Zhuo. She'd rather pick someone like Su Zimo from outside and stage a fake marriage. Once the time was right, she could simply issue a divorce letter and end things cleanly. Don't act impulsively, she whispered. Without solid proof, you can't touch him. Back at the city wall earlier, someone had tried to push Su Zimo off. The one behind that scheme had been Mu Zhuo. Su Zimo didn't care. Mu Zhuo wasn't worth his attention. After dinner, can I visit the Black Crow Dao Court's library? Su Zimo asked. As long as you don't go to the third floor, no one will stop you if you're with me, Bian Yu promised. The third floor was the Dao Court's restricted zone, its true core. Even she wasn't allowed to enter freely, let alone Su Zimo. It's fine. I just want to browse some general records, Su Zimo said with a shake of his head. He wasn't interested in the Black Crow Dao Court's martial arts or cultivation techniques. What he wanted was information about the Inferno Crucible Heaven, the legacy of the ancient gods, and the mysterious figure who had created the water beasts. When the banquet ended, the guests gradually dispersed. The Grand Emperor of the Black Crow Dao Court, Bian Wenzhou, remained seated at the head of the hall. He cleared his throat and said, Yuer, it's time we talked about your situation. Father, we already agreed on this, Bian Yu said, stepping forward. I don't want to marry Mu Zhuo. I already have someone I care about. You should respect that. Nonsense, the second elder barked immediately. How can someone from the Black Crow Dao Court marry a man of unknown origin? So what are you saying? Bian Yu retorted. That I must marry Mu Zhuo? I have a suggestion, Bian Wenzhou interjected calmly. Let's test the young man. If he passes, we'll permit the marriage. If he fails, he'll be expelled from Firebane City. At his words, the room fell into thoughtful silence. The proposal was reasonable, and since it came from the mansion lord himself, no one could oppose it. I agree, said the first elder. I agree as well, others echoed one after another. Bian Yu hesitated, glancing at Su Zimo, who looked utterly unconcerned. How do you plan to test him? She asked. Simple, Bian Wenzhou said with a smile. He'll face one of the younger generation from our mansion in combat. The result will speak for itself. The others exchanged approving looks and nodded in agreement. Yuer, make the arrangements, Bian Wenzhou said, waving his hand. Bring him to the martial arena tomorrow at noon. Bian Yu led Su Zimo out of the hall, while the elders slowly dispersed. Only Bian Wenzhou remained seated, motionless. When everyone was gone, Lu Xingyun stepped out of the shadows and approached. The path is set, Bian Wenzhou said quietly. Are you sure your information is accurate? Trust me, Lu Xingyun replied with a nod. That man is definitely a grand emperor. None of the young ones in our mansion can stand against him. Bian Wenzhou tapped the table thoughtfully. Seems the Mu imperial clan needs to be reminded of their place. But with Mu Qingyun around, we can't push them too far. After chatting briefly, Su Zimo and Bian Yu went their separate ways. She went to rest, while he returned to continue studying the blue-eyed water beast. This creature was crucial to his path toward the Saint Sovereign realm. Once he fully comprehended it, he would be able to make that breakthrough. Night deepened. As Su Zimo emerged from his meditative state, he realized there was someone else in his room, so silent that he hadn't noticed until he was forced to awaken. It was a woman in a flowing white robe, standing by the window with her back to him. A light ribbon drifted around her in the breeze, and her long black hair shimmered under the moonlight, turning silver white. "Who are you?" Su Zimo asked. "Bien Shershur," the woman replied softly. "Bien Yu's elder sister." Su Zimo frowned. He didn't know her. "What the hell do you want?" "I just came to take a look at you," she said with a faint smile. Her face was hidden from view, but even her silhouette was stunning. "Look at me?" Su Zimo asked, puzzled. "It's been a long time, Infernal Lord," Bien Shershur said suddenly. Her words made Su Zimo's eyes narrow. She knew who he was, or at least something about him, while he knew nothing about her. He hated that feeling of being at a disadvantage. "Who exactly are you?" he asked again. "I already told you. I'm the eldest daughter of the Black Crow Dao Court, Bien Shershur," she answered calmly. "Do we know each other?" Su Zimo pressed. "Yes and no," she replied after a pause. "I know you, but you may not remember me." Su Zimo stayed silent. She too said nothing for a while. The night outside was beautiful, the moon bright and round, though the heat of the Inferno Crucible heaven made the air almost stifling. "Infernal Lord," Bien Shershur said at last, "I heard you're searching for traces of the ancient gods. You must be trying to end the exile of the primordial demon cave." "You know about the ancient gods?" Su Zimo asked. "I recognized you only after hearing that you were searching for them," she admitted. "I don't know the ancient gods myself, but I know someone who does." "Who?" Su Zimo asked quickly. Bien Shershur extended a slender hand and pointed at the blue-eyed water beast beside him. Su Zimo's expression shifted as realization dawned, but he wasn't yet certain. "Where can I find him?" he asked. "I don't know," she said. "But next time the water beasts attack the city, try following them. You may find what you're looking for." "That's all I came to say," she added softly. "I've seen an old acquaintance. It's time for me to go." As her final words faded, her figure vanished into the moonlight. Bien Shershur had appeared out of nowhere and left just as abruptly. Su Zimo stood beneath the moonlight, lost in thought. That she was an old acquaintance he was certain of, but whether she was an ally or an enemy, that he did not know. And because of that, he could not fully trust her. Glancing at the blue-eyed water beast beside him, he sat cross-legged once more and began meditating again. He had already made up his mind. The next time the water beasts attacked the city, he would go and see for himself. The night passed in silence. By morning, his maid Little Jade brought in breakfast. As Su Zimo ate, he asked casually, "Little Jade, have you ever seen the eldest young lady of the Black Crow Dao Court?" "Why does Master ask?" Little Jade replied, puzzled. "The eldest lady rarely leaves her courtyard. I've only seen her 2 or 3 times myself." "What kind of person do you think she is?" Su Zimo asked. "I don't know much," Little Jade said. "The eldest lady is calm and quiet, not one to argue or fight. But whether it's the elders or the Grand Emperor, they all hold her in high regard." "I see," Su Zimo said, nodding. "And where is her courtyard?" "Even if I told you, Master, you wouldn't be able to enter," Little Jade said. "You should focus on today's test. Don't let the second miss down." Su Zimo smiled faintly. To him, the so-called test was meaningless. He had no intention of staying in the Black Crow Dao Court anyway. When the army of water beasts came again, that would likely be the day he left. After breakfast, he asked around about Bien Shershur's residence and headed there openly. Days of rest in the mansion had healed all the injuries he'd suffered crossing the Inferno Crucible heaven. Bien Shershur's courtyard was secluded and peaceful, far from the bustle of the main estate. Few people ever went there. As he approached, a faint sound of zither music drifted through the air. Looking up, Su Zimo could just make out a graceful silhouette seated in the attic pavilion. White mist coiled gently around her as she played, her posture serene and composed. At the gate stood a maid with delicate features. She seemed unsurprised by his arrival and smiled politely. "Young master, our lady does not receive visitors," she said. "Tell her an old friend has come," Suzimo replied. "The lady said even if it were you, she still wouldn't see you," the maid said, shaking her head. "Then tell her I'll be staying in the Black Crow Dao Court for a while," Suzimo said. "If she wishes to talk, she can come find me." With that, he turned and left. The maid waited until his figure disappeared down the path before returning to the attic. "The young master is gone," she said softly. There was a sharp twang as a string on the zither snapped. "My heart wavered," Bien Shershur murmured. She could no longer play. Standing by the window, she gazed out over the entire Black Crow Dao Court from above. "All of this," she whispered, "is nothing but a cursed fate. Little Su, make sure you give it your all in today's match," Bienyu said anxiously as they walked. "Your opponent is Zhang Qiusa, the strongest of our Dao Court's younger generation." She kept feeding him details about Zhang Qiusa, worried that Suzimo might lose. Suzimo, however, looked utterly bored. They arrived at the Black Crow Dao Court's martial arena, an enormous open field. At its center stood a massive statue of a black crow, wings spread as if ready to soar. One talon gripped the ground, the other lifted skyward. Its eyes, dark and brooding, seemed to gaze into the heavens. More than half of the Dao Court's disciples had gathered to watch. "I heard Zhang Qiusa is dueling the second Mrs. Fiancé today," someone whispered. "Fiancé? Isn't that a bit premature? The match hasn't even started yet." "Exactly. Zhang Qiusa's already reached the God Meridian realm. Among the young generation, only Mu Qingyun surpasses him. The rest aren't even close." The crowd murmured excitedly. "There he is!" someone shouted when Suzimo and Bienyu appeared. Around the arena, Bien Wenzhou sat at the highest seat, flanked by the 6 elders of the mansion. On the raised altar stood a young man who had been waiting for some time. He sat cross-legged, his white robe fluttering in the breeze. In front of him was a long red spear, its tip driven into the stone floor. The weapon was over 7 feet long, its shaft engraved with the image of a coiling fire dragon. What drew the most attention, however, was the young man's blazing red hair, and the crimson mark between his brows that gave him an almost demonic air. Before Suzimo stepped onto the stage, Bienyu hesitated. "If you can't beat him, surrender early," she warned. "Don't throw your life away." Suzimo just smiled. As he stepped onto the altar, the atmosphere instantly shifted. The air itself seemed to hum with tension, a faint wind brushing past like a current of energy. Zhang Qiusa rose, his eyes locking on Suzimo's, cold and filled with killing intent. In truth, he bore no personal grudge against Suzimo, but he owed someone a favor, and that favor required him to accidentally kill Suzimo during the duel. "I almost thought you'd hide like a coward and not show up," Zhang Qiusa taunted. "Talking to ants is a waste of breath," Suzimo said, waving his hand dismissively. He turned his gaze toward Bien Wenzhou and the elders. "Can we begin? Since both sides are present, begin," Bien Wenzhou said calmly. "But remember, this is a sparring match. No killing blows. In a fight, accidents happen," Zhang Qiusa said with a smirk. "If someone gets hurt, or worse, don't blame me." He grabbed his spear, and flames immediately engulfed it. With a single step forward, the weapon roared like a dragon of fire, surging towards Suzimo with explosive force. Suzimo's expression didn't change. He simply raised his hand and flicked the spear's tip. Boom! The entire weapon was blasted out of Zhang Qiusa's hands, sent spinning through the air. Zhang Qiusa staggered backward, his boots scraping deep marks into the floor. "What terrifying strength!" he muttered, his face darkening. The arrogance in his eyes was gone, replaced by grim focus. "You said not to blame you for accidents," Suzimo said with a faint smile. "Remember that." Zhang Qiusa snorted coldly and gripped his spear again, his expression twisting with strain. "Myriad spears strike as one," he shouted. His fire spear blurred, multiplying into thousands of flaming copies that filled the air like a storm. The sky above the arena was packed with blazing spears, each one blazing with destructive heat. The illusionary weapons shot toward Su Zimo in a torrential wave, splitting the air and shattering the void around them. Su Zimo didn't move. He merely stood there, bored, and even yawned. The countless fire spears struck him all at once. Boom! 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 Explosions erupted across the stage, shaking the entire arena. When the flames and smoke finally cleared, the crowd gasped. Su Zimo stood there, completely unscathed. Not even a wrinkle marked his robe. For a long moment, the entire arena fell silent. Even Zhang Qiusa himself was drenched in cold sweat. That last technique had been one of his strongest. He hadn't expected Su Zimo to simply stand there and take it, without even moving. Yet he couldn't so much as scratch him. He swallowed hard as Su Zimo raised his hand. Instinctively, Zhang Qiusa stepped back several paces before realizing how cowardly that must have looked. His face darkened, torn between shame and anger. One strike, Su Zimo said calmly. If you can withstand it, I'll spare your life. Stop bragging. Show me what you've got. Zhang Qiusa snapped, though his tone betrayed his nerves. Spirit energy surged wildly from his body, fire roaring beneath his skin until his entire face glowed crimson. Below the arena, several elders turned to Bian Wenzhou. Lord, one ventured cautiously, should we intervene? It was obvious to everyone, Zhang Qiusa had already lost. If they didn't step in, the humiliation would be total. And deep down, none of them wanted Su Zimo to win. A loss is a loss, Bian Wenzhou said, narrowing his eyes. What now? You'd rather we earn a reputation for being sore losers. The others fell silent instantly. No one dared to speak again. Su Zimo extended his right hand, and a surge of immense power gathered in his palm. He didn't use any technique, because his opponent wasn't worthy of one. It was just an ordinary palm strike. Yet to Zhang Qiusa it felt as terrifying as the jaws of a beast. Every hair on his body stood on end. Under that overwhelming pressure, even breathing became difficult. His spirit energy slowed, almost freezing in place. Spear, descend! Zhang Qiusa roared, thrusting his spear forward in a desperate attempt to pierce Su Zimo's palm. But before raw power, all resistance was meaningless. A deafening boom exploded before him, and Zhang Qiusa's body was hurled backward like a rag doll. Blood sprayed through the air in a long crimson arc before he crashed heavily to the ground. Su Zimo hadn't even used his full strength. Had he done so, Zhang Qiusa would have been reduced to ash. Even so, the blow had destroyed his cultivation. His future was effectively over. Su Zimo was not a merciful man. Once hostility appeared between them, there was no room left for reconciliation. Zhang Qiusa lay on the ground, blood soaking through his robes. The onlookers gasped, rushing forward to lift him up. Take him away for treatment, Bian Wenzhou ordered with a wave of his hand. Lord, this was supposed to be a friendly match, the second elder interjected righteously. Yet this boy nearly killed him. I say we cannot let him stay. Su Zimo smiled faintly. Old man, I barely used a fraction of my power. Seems your Black Crow disciples are just that fragile. Unless you'd like to test me yourself. How dare you speak to me like that? The second elder shouted, his beard bristling with rage. Su Zimo sneered. His palm shot out in the elder's direction, a violent storm of spirit energy swirling within it. The air itself seemed to darken. The second elder snorted and summoned his true fate behind him, a colossal black crow that blotted out the sky, shrieking as it lunged toward Su Zimo with killing intent. Such an attack was meant to kill, not spar. Boring, Su Zimo said lazily. His descending palm shattered everything. The deathly aura, the crow, the spirit defenses, obliterated in an instant. The elder had no chance to react before he was smashed to the ground, coughing blood. Elder! The other elders cried, leaping to their feet, faces twisted with shock and fury. Su Zimo's strength had far exceeded anything they expected. Only Bien Wenzhou remained seated, calm as ever, as if none of this surprised him. "Enough," Bien Wenzhou said finally. "Haven't we lost enough face already?" The other elders reluctantly sat back down, their expressions grim. The second elder struggled to his feet, glaring at Su Zimo with a mix of anger and fear. "So, Black Crow Emperor," Su Zimo said with a faint smile, "how do you plan to announce the result?" "Of course you won," Bien Wenzhou replied with a light chuckle. Su Zimo nodded and stepped down from the arena. "Master Su," Bien Wenzhou's voice called after him, "I think we should have a word." Su Zimo hesitated briefly, then nodded. Bien Wenzhou dismissed everyone else and led him to a courtyard where a freshly brewed pot of tea waited beneath a pavilion. They sat across from each other at a stone table. Despite being the lord, Bien Wenzhou poured tea personally, showing no trace of arrogance. "What do you wish to discuss?" Su Zimo asked. "Your marriage to Yuer," Bien Wenzhou said with a smile. "You should know that's impossible," Su Zimo replied, shaking his head. "Yuer is not worthy of you," Bien Wenzhou sighed. "Then let's skip the pleasantries," Su Zimo said flatly. "Say what you really mean." Bien Wenzhou chuckled. "Have you ever heard of the fire god race's place of origin?" Su Zimo shook his head. His knowledge of the fire god race was limited, only that they traced their roots back to the ancient fire god Jerome. "Our fire god race has always had a sacred birthplace," Bien Wenzhou explained. "It's said to be where our kind first emerged. For generations, it was guarded by the Radiant Court. But recently, the court issued a decree. Every fire-blooded clan member now has the right to enter the ancestral grounds." He paused briefly before continuing. "Of course, that right is limited. We must compete for it. The Chaos Fire God Realm has been granted only 32 spots." At that, Su Zimo understood. "You want me to help the Black Crow Dao Court win one of those spots?" The original candidate was Zhang Qiusa, Bien Wenzhou admitted with a smile. "But now that I've met you, I'd rather place my bet elsewhere." "And why?" Su Zimo asked evenly. "Would I agree to that?" "Before today, I wasn't sure," Bien Wenzhou said, smiling mysteriously. "But now, someone's given me something. She said I could trade it for your cooperation." Seeing Su Zimo's puzzled expression, Bien Wenzhou reached into his sleeve and produced a clear, transparent crystal. The moment it appeared, Su Zimo's eyes locked onto it, unblinking. "The woman told me this used to belong to you," Bien Wenzhou said. "What do you think? It was Bien Shishir who gave it to you, wasn't it?" Su Zimo asked, narrowing his eyes. The instant he saw the crystal, fragments of memory inherited from the previous Infernal Lord surfaced. He knew exactly what it was. "Deal," Su Zimo said, taking the crystal and tucking it away. "1 month from now, I'll go to the Chaos Fire God Realm." Watching Su Zimo's back as he walked away and finally disappeared from sight, Bien Wenzhou sighed softly. "He's gone. You can come out now." From the garden nearby, Bien Shishir emerged. She wore a white robe that accentuated her graceful figure. Her oval face framed by long hair, and her long eyelashes trembled lightly as she blinked. "Father," Bien Shishir greeted softly. "Why didn't you want to see him?" Bien Wenzhou asked. "I'm destined to leave anyway. What difference would it make if I saw him? Life is full of regrets. An unfinished ending saves us from greater sorrow, don't you think?" She replied with a faint smile. "What exactly is that crystal?" Bien Wenzhou asked curiously. "In anyone else's hands, it's worthless. But in his, it can destroy the entire Inferno Crucible heaven." "What do you think?" She countered lightly. At those words, Bien Wenzhou froze in place, utterly stunned. Destroy the entire Inferno Crucible heaven? That sounded absurd. Yet judging from her calm expression, she wasn't joking. Bien Shishir merely left it at that, not explaining further. "If it's such a thing of value, we should have asked for more in return. Exchanging it for a single Chaos Fire God Realm quota seems far too little," Bien Wenzhou said regretfully. "Father, Greed consumes men like serpents swallowing elephants, she said, smiling faintly. If not for the debt he would owe me, I wouldn't have asked for even that quota. Giving it to him freely would have been fine. Sure, Bien Wanzhou sighed. There are many things I've never interfered with. You've always known your own mind since childhood. As your father, I only hope you remember, no matter what happens, this will always be your home. Father, let's not play the emotional card, she said with a gentle laugh. Who knows, maybe one day you'll be wishing I'd left the Black Crow Dao court sooner. She gazed in the direction Su Zimo had gone, a soft sigh escaping her lips. Back in his own courtyard, Su Zimo took out the crystal. From the memories of the previous Infernal Lord, he knew exactly what this was. The Celestial Tribulation Crystal. Before a particle world was destroyed, the previous Infernal Lord had absorbed all the destructive power of its tribulation into this primal crystal. Though the world was ultimately annihilated, the crystal in Su Zimo's hands now contained the power that had once destroyed a world. He formed hand seals, channeling a mysterious series of sigils. As each mark merged into the crystal, faint crackling sounds echoed. Chains of light began to form across its surface, binding the entire crystal tightly. Then, with a sudden boom, the chains shattered and dissolved into the void. When Su Zimo looked again, the crystal had changed completely. It was a jagged rhomboid, irregular and pulsating faintly. Inside it seemed to lie a world on the brink of destruction. The heavens within were split open by countless rifts. The earth trembled, the skies darkened, and storms of annihilation raged. The ground quaked endlessly. Cities crumbled, and all living things perished. A world's destruction was as cruel as it was absolute. The heavens were gray and heavy, filled with the omnipresent force of tribulation. Su Zimo carefully put the celestial tribulation crystal away. In the memories left by the previous Infernal Lord, this crystal was meant for the final heaven-slaying war. Yet before that war began, the Infernal Lord had given it to a woman. Then, he went alone to confront the heavens, and never returned. No one knew why. When the heaven-slaying failed, all traces of him were erased by the heavenly Tao itself. At least now I've got a real trump card, Su Zimo murmured. He glanced toward the courtyard gate. Someone was coming. Stepping outside, he found Bien Yu waiting. What did my father say to you? She asked. Just some trivial matters, Su Zimo replied with a faint smile. What about our marriage? Bien Yu pressed. Do you really want to marry me? He asked, his gaze deep and unreadable. Marrying you is still better than marrying that bastard Muzhua, she said awkwardly. A forced union brings no happiness. Your father won't pressure you anymore. You can choose whoever you want, Su Zimo said, waving his hand dismissively. Really? She asked, eyes lighting up. He's got more important things to worry about now, Su Zimo said. The Chaos Fire God Realm's quota, the Fire God Race's origin land, and the increasingly frequent water beast attacks. Those were enough to keep Bien Wanzhou occupied. Bien Yu's marriage was the least of his concerns. Still, thank you, Bien Yu said sincerely. If you ever run into trouble here in Firebane City, come find me anytime. She patted her chest in promise. Su Zimo chuckled softly. The next few days passed quietly. He focused on two things: comprehending the primal Tao of the water beast, and waiting for the next beast siege. As night deepened, Firebane City fell into silence. The citizens, as usual, went to rest early. In his courtyard, Su Zimo exhaled slowly and emerged from his meditative state. With a flick of his hand, a rift opened to the god world, and a colossal figure stepped out. Master, Chaos bowed deeply. You've reached the Grand Emperor realm now, Su Zimo said. Keep pushing forward. Chaos was his mount from the primordial heartlands, but since they came to the Nine Heavens, the beast hadn't been used much. Its power here simply wasn't as overwhelming. Tonight, I have a task for you, Su Zimo said. Your command, my lord, Chaos responded immediately. Go to the Mu Imperial clan and kill one man, Muzhua. As he waved his hand, Mu's likeness appeared in midair. Su Zimo had seen him during the Black Crow Dao Court's celebration banquet, so he remembered his face clearly. "As you command," Chaos said. Its enormous wings unfurled, blotting out the moonlight as it soared into the sky, leaving a trail of light as it flew toward the Mu estate. Tonight, the Mu Imperial clan would know no peace. Though not as powerful as the Black Crow Dao Court, the Mu Imperial clan status had risen greatly thanks to Mu Qingyun. Their estate was vast and grand. Even at midnight, servants patrolled the grounds with lanterns. Suddenly, a suffocating beastly aura swept across the entire estate. A servant looked up and froze. Far off on the horizon, an immense creature was flying toward them at incredible speed. "Q quick! Inform the Patriarch. We're under attack!" One of them shouted in panic. "Go tell young Master Mu as well." Another added, Mu Qingyun was the family's true war god. Then a thunderous voice rolled across the night sky. "By order of my lord, I come for Mu's head. Where is Muzhua?" Chaos's deep, resonant voice echoed through all of Firebane City. When Chaos's deep voice echoed across the heavens, the entire Mu household was thrown into panic. Countless servants scattered like headless ants, and even the sleeping residents of Firebane City were startled awake. Could it be another water beast attack? What's going on? Who would dare provoke the Mu Imperial clan? It's a demon beast. Look at the sky. What kind of creature is that? The citizens whispered among themselves in fear. Meanwhile, in the direction of the Black Crow Dao Court, Bian Wenzhou stood in his courtyard, drinking wine beneath the moonlight. He, too, sensed the presence of chaos and gazed quietly toward that distant direction. "Lord Patriarch." Several of the Black Raven elders hurriedly arrived, bowing before him. Any disturbance in the city caught their attention, though matters concerning the manor were not theirs to decide, so they had come directly to Bian Wenzhou. "Why the panic?" Bian Wenzhou asked calmly. "There's a demon beast attacking the city," the second elder said first. "A demon beast attack? Then why do I not sense the city itself under siege?" Bian Wenzhou countered. "That beast seems to be heading toward the Mu Imperial clan, doesn't it?" "The Mu Imperial clan is still part of Firebane City," another elder said hurriedly. "If something happens to them and we, the Black Crow Dao Court, stand idle, people will question our honor." "Yes," another added. "The water beasts have been rampant lately. Losing the Mu Imperial clan would weaken the city's defenses. It would harm us all." Listening to their chatter, Bian Wenzhou finally replied, "Very well. You may go and observe, but don't act rashly. If that demon beast intends to destroy the entire Mu Imperial clan, then intervene. But if it seeks only one man, stay out of it." At those words, even the slowest among them realized something was off. The Patriarch seemed to know more than he was letting on. But since he had spoken, they dared not argue and quickly departed. "Oh, and one more thing," Bian Wenzhou called after them. "No matter what happens, under no circumstances are you to harm that beast." After everyone left, a maid entered from outside the courtyard. "Patriarch," she said, "the young lady asked me to remind you whatever that person intends to do, let him. If we interfere, disaster will fall upon the Black Crow Dao Court as well." Repeating Bian Shishi's words, she added softly, "Against that man, the Black Crow Dao Court isn't even enough to fill the gap between his teeth." "I understand." Bian Wenzhou waved her off. Then he sighed. "Still, I'd better see it for myself. If one of those old fools loses his temper, the blame will fall on us." These were troubled times. Water beasts ravaged the lands outside, and within the fire god race, power struggles over the ancestral grounds raged constantly. At the Mu estate, Chaos's thunderous voice rolled through every corner. "What trouble has that unfilial son Muzhua caused now?" snorted Mu Fanhai, the patriarch of the Mu Imperial clan. He stepped out of his chamber and summoned all the family elders. "Where is Muzhua?" he demanded, sweeping his gaze across the hall. But there was no sign of him. "The second young master is asleep, sir." He told us not to disturb him, a trembling servant replied. He can still sleep at a time like this? Mu Fanhai said coldly. First elder, go and drag that unfilial brat here yourself. Then turning toward the composed figure standing beside him, he said, Qing Yun, go calm that beast. See if there's any chance to resolve this peacefully. Yes, father, Mu Qing Yun replied, bowing slightly. Dressed in white robes, he stepped out into the night wind. Above the Mu estate, dense infernal energy blanketed the heavens, darker than the night itself. Mu Qing Yun looked up, sensing the overwhelming power that filled the sky, but still he rose into the air toward the source of it. Senior, to what do we owe your visit? He called out steadily. If my Mu Imperial clan has somehow offended you, please tell us, so we may make amends. I'm not here for you. Chaos's deep, resonant voice replied. Bring out Mujua. Its massive body remained hidden within the dark clouds. Its voice alone was enough to shake the heavens. If my younger brother has offended you in some way, our family is willing to apologize, Mu Qing Yun said. State your condition. Anything within our power, we will do. This is my lord's decree, Chaos said impatiently. Once my lord commands, his death is certain. No condition can change that. I have come only to kill Mujua. Hand him over or your whole clan will perish. Don't say I didn't warn you. In that case, Mu Qing Yun said solemnly, drawing his silver-white sword, allow me to test Senior's might. You're not strong enough, Chaos said. You may have reached the peak of the God Meridian realm and stand but a step from becoming a Grand Emperor, but a step short is still short. Even so, Mu Qing Yun said earnestly, please grant me the chance to try. As his words fell, the demonic clouds above began to twist and recede, as though swallowed by an unseen force. Slowly, the vast form of Chaos emerged from the darkness. It was even larger than before, its entire body black as the void, a red-violet vortex swirling in its abdomen, absorbing endless power. Its colossal wings spread wide, blotting out the moon itself. All across Firebane City, people looked up and saw the silhouette in the heavens, brighter and more terrifying than the moon. Young one, Chaos said arrogantly, I'll give you one move. Don't say I didn't let you strike first. Thank you, Senior. Mu Qing Yun bowed deeply. The silver-white sword in his hand glowed faintly, but from it radiated a burning heat. As a scion of the fire god race, his body surged with fiery power. White flames rose all around him, half white and cold as frost, half red and blazing as magma. Two opposing natures bound together in perfect balance. Eternal yin-yang slash, Mu Qing Yun shouted, each word heavy with power. All his energy poured into that single strike. The void split in two, half frozen by ice, half scorched by fire. Chaos tilted its head slightly. The fire god race's strength lies in heat, yet your flames have mutated. But that mutation has made you stronger. Watching the twin flames surge toward it, Chaos's vortex pulsed. Within it, destructive power gathered like the birth of a new world. Lightning spread, space shattered. A crimson-violet torrent burst forth from its core, colliding head-on with the fiery blade. The resulting explosion consumed the heavens themselves. Look! Someone cried from the edge of the blast. A figure in white plummeted from the sky, Mu Qing Yun. I'm still not strong enough, he said bitterly. Senior, please spare Qing Yun's life. I've brought you Mujua. A voice shouted from within the Mu estate. Mu Fanhai, patriarch of the Mu Imperial clan, emerged from the inner courtyard, pressing down on a young man bound tightly with celestial ropes. The youth's face was filled with defiance, but he could not move at all. From the void descended Mu Qing Yun. He bowed once more to Chaos and said, Thank you, Senior, for showing mercy. I did not use my full strength, Chaos replied. But you are extraordinary nonetheless. It won't be long before you ascend and become a Grand Emperor. Its pupils shifted, fixing their gaze upon Mujua. Senior, Mu Fanhai asked, May I know what offense my son has committed? This is not something you are meant to know, Chaos said indifferently. Its massive claw reached down from the void. Seeing this, Mujwa screamed, "Father! Brother! Save me! I don't want to die." "Second brother," Mu Qingyun said quietly. "You've always been arrogant and overbearing. You've survived only because our Mu imperial clan stood behind you. Now you've provoked someone you should never have touched. I've done all I can. Don't drag our family down with you." "Mu Qingyun," Mujwa shouted. "You're doing this on purpose. You've got a vicious heart. Is it that you want me dead, so there's no one left to compete with you for the patriarch's seat?" Mu Qingyun only shook his head, disappointment in his eyes. "So that's what you think of me." Turning to his father, he said, "Father, I'm tired. I'll go rest. Let this matter end here." "Qingyun, is there truly no room for peace?" Mu Fanhai asked, unwilling to give up. "Father," Mu Qingyun said softly, "the fact that he ended up like this has much to do with your indulgence over the years." With that, he turned and left. Chaos' massive claw descended, seizing Mujwa by the head. The youth struggled violently, shouting curses, but it was useless. The Mu clansman could only watch helplessly as Chaos lifted him high into the air. With a single motion, Chaos opened its enormous maw. A wave of blood-soaked breath swept through the air as it swallowed Mujwa whole. When his son was gone, Mu Fanhai suddenly looked much older. Few things in the world were more painful than the loss of a child. "Zhuor is dead," Mu Fanhai said hoarsely. "On behalf of the entire Mu imperial clan, I offer Senior our apologies. Is there anything else you command of us?" Though he was grief-stricken, he knew the situation was beyond his control. Survival came first. "That's enough," Chaos said, its form fading once more into shadow. "I have fulfilled my lord's command." Came swiftly and left even faster. Only the Mu imperial clan remained, shrouded in dread and unease. All of this had nothing to do with Su Zimo. Killing a man, to him, was no different from crushing an ant. For several days afterward, no one from the Black Crow Dao court disturbed him. He devoted himself entirely to comprehending the primal Daos within the azure-eyed water beast's essence. Finally, one day he opened his eyes. The primal Daos within his body surged like a boundless sea. Each strand of power carried a distinct attribute, intertwining and merging until they formed something entirely new. Su Zimo named it the Primordial Chaos Primal Dao. Primordial Chaos represented the source of all power. It could divide into yin and yang, or unfold into the 5 elements. It was the most primitive and the strongest of all forces. "The primal Daos are refined," Su Zimo murmured. "Next comes the heavenly tribulation." Outside the courtyard, hurried footsteps echoed. Then came the voice of little Jade from beyond the door. "Master Su, the water beasts are attacking the city again." For some time now, Su Zimo had been monitoring the movements of the water beasts. Because of that, any disturbance immediately brought a report from the Black Crow Dao court. "Understood," Su Zimo said, rising to his feet. "It's time I took a look for myself." With little Jade following close behind, he made his way to the city walls. This time, the water beast's assault was far greater than before. Countless beasts surged from every direction, surrounding Fire-Bane City completely. Their momentum was desperate, either victory or death. Within the city, the Fire God Race's soldiers gathered once again, though this time, the commander was not Mu Qingyun but Lu Xingyun. Ever since the incident with the Mu Imperial clan, little Jade explained, Mu Qingyun has gone into seclusion. They say he won't emerge unless he breaks through to the Grand Emperor realm. Now, the Black Crow Dao court bears the brunt of defending the city. Su Zimo knew full well that the so-called incident with the Mu Imperial clan had been the work of Chaos, his own doing. "I'm leaving," Su Zimo said. "Tell Black Crow Emperor that I will go to the Chaos Fire God realm, under the name of the Black Crow Dao court." "Yes, young master," little Jade said respectfully. Also, Su Zimo added, "Order the Fire God Race soldiers to retreat. These water beasts, I can destroy them alone." The city walls were crowded with people, murmuring anxiously. The thunderous roar of millions of water beasts grew nearer, their combined auras pressing down like a tidal wave. Faces went pale. The sheer force of it carried a sense of inevitable destruction. Su Zimo rose into the air and stood calmly before the city gates. Who is that? Has he gone mad? One man facing all those beasts. Never seen him before. Whoever he is, he's got guts. As the tide of water beasts surged forward, Su Zimo gripped his blade, Shadow Tyrant. The weapon trembled slightly in his hand as endless killing intent coiled around him. He swung. It was a simple motion, calm, effortless. But the sword intent swept through heaven and earth. For a moment it spanned millions of miles. The world before everyone's eyes vanished, leaving only that one overwhelming arc of silver sword light devouring everything. The roar of the blade filled their ears, mingled with the screams of dying beasts. When the spectators finally snapped out of their stupor and looked down from the wall, they froze. Some turned white as ash, some retched. Below the city walls, the corpses of water beasts stretched endlessly across the plain. Piled high like mountains, rivers of blood flowed between them, staining the earth crimson. 100 million water beasts dead with a single strike. Even seasoned warriors who had slain countless foes had never witnessed such slaughter. Su Zimo walked calmly through the river of blood, his gaze fixed toward the north. A small group of water beasts was fleeing in panic. He had left them alive on purpose. Following them, he wanted to see where they would run. The beast's speed was not great. They ran north from Firebane City, crossing mountains, wading rivers, and climbing hills. Even Su Zimo lost track of how long he had been following them. Finally, the water beasts reached a village and vanished completely. Su Zimo stopped before the entrance. Two massive ancient trees stood on either side of the path, each thousands of years old. The village had no name. From the outside, it looked lively, bustling with villagers coming and going. Su Zimo stepped inside. The instant he entered, he sensed something was wrong, because the village before him had vanished. Or rather, it had never truly existed at all. What he had seen was merely an illusion, an elaborate formation conjured to deceive the eyes. The 8 trigrams began to shift and revolve. The village faded away, replaced by an endless tide of water beasts stretching as far as the eye could see. From horizon to horizon, nothing but roaring beasts filled the land. Even the sound of their howls was enough to make one's eardrums rupture. "I don't know who you are," Su Zimo said calmly, "but show yourself. You were quite pleased with your slaughter beneath Firebane City, weren't you?" A voice answered, echoing from all directions, its true source impossible to locate. "Today, let's see how long you can keep killing. These water beasts are endless. I want to see how long you last." "I have no hostility toward you," Su Zimo replied. "There are simply some things I wish to understand." He had come in search of information about the ancient gods and did not wish to provoke unnecessary conflict. As for these water beasts, they shouldn't pose much trouble for someone like you. A man who can create life itself wouldn't bother with such trivialities. The disembodied voice went silent for a few moments before speaking again. "Whatever your reasons, if you want to talk, first, break my formation." As the voice fell silent, thousands upon thousands of water beasts charged at once. "To break your formation? That's hardly difficult," Su Zimo said with a faint smile. The traceless compass and the heaven derivation astrolabe began to orbit above his head. With those 2 divine instruments, there was hardly a formation in existence that could withstand him. He gripped his blade tightly. No matter how many water beasts surged forward, they were all cut down to nothing. Though the beasts were said to be infinite, Su Zimo's headpiece continued to calculate rapidly. At last, the compass indicated the key direction. Su Zimo turned his gaze toward the location it pointed to and hurled his blade, Shadow Tyrant, forward. It streaked through the air like lightning, vanishing and reappearing in an instant. A thunderous crack resounded. Something within the illusion shattered, and a corner of the great formation broke apart. More and more beasts rushed to that breach, trying to keep him from approaching. Even the one hidden in the shadows grew anxious. A torrent of water burst forth, aiming straight for Suzimo's compass to destroy it. "I was waiting for that," Suzimo said with a grin. He waved his right hand, and Shadow Tyrant reversed course, returning and slicing toward the source of the torrent. The force of the blade tore through heaven and earth. The raging waters split apart, and somewhere in the void, it seemed to cut into a hidden being. A muffled groan followed, and the formation began to crumble. As Suzimo surveyed the scene, everything appeared as he had suspected. There had never been any village here. All that existed was a desolate wasteland, endless and barren, littered with white bones. Amidst the bleak landscape stood a single thatched hut, as lonely and fragile as a withered flower in winter. Suzimo looked down. Faint traces of blood stained the ground, leading toward the hut. Step by step, he followed the trail, his blade circling at his side. At last, he stood before the thatched house. "Come out," he commanded, but no response came from within. "If you won't come out," he warned, "then I'll simply cut this hut down." Still silence. Suzimo raised Shadow Tyrant and slashed. "Is this how you ask for favors?" An aged voice said suddenly. The door creaked open. First, a withered hand, skin clinging to bone, emerged from the darkness. Then an old man in black robes stepped into view. His entire face was concealed by his hood, revealing only a pair of weary, time-worn eyes. A faint trickle of blood seeped from his chest, which he clutched with one hand. "Young man," the old man said hoarsely, "you've wounded me. Aren't you afraid I'll refuse your request?" "You know what I'm here for?" Suzimo asked. Few people, even in the Black Crow Dao court, knew he sought the ancient gods. "I don't," the old man said. "But since you tracked my water beasts here, you must have business with me." "I'm not looking for you," Suzimo replied. "I'm looking for the one behind you." "There is no one behind me," the old man said flatly, his eyes darkening. "I've been alone for a very long time." "No," Suzimo said, shaking his head. "With your strength, you're nowhere near capable of creating life. So tell me, does your master refuse to see me? Or do you refuse to let me see him?" The old man's expression flickered. He hadn't expected Suzimo to see through him so easily. In a moment of inattention, he had revealed far too much. "Boy, I've no idea what you're talking about," the old man snapped coldly. "If you have nothing else, leave." "No rush," Suzimo smiled. "I'll make sure you understand." With that, he swung his blade. "Damn you!" the old man roared. Behind him erupted torrents of pure water spirit energy, one of the rarest forces in existence. It was said that only deep within mountains, rivers, and lakes could even a trace of this essence be found. To strip a land of its water spirit energy was to render it lifeless forever. And yet the amount surging from behind the old man was vast enough to shock even Suzimo. "I had planned to spare you," the old man growled. "But you've chosen your own death. I find you more and more interesting," Suzimo said, laughing. Shadow Tyrant clashed against the torrents of water spirit energy. The power that struck him forced Suzimo back several steps, his sword arm trembling from the impact. "Waterfall Marsh!" the old man cried, spreading his arms wide. Behind him, a waterfall soared into the sky. The rushing sound of water echoed all around. Though this land had long been a wasteland, the lifeless soil now seemed to stir with renewal. Grass began to sprout. Dead trees pushed out tender green buds. "To waste so much of my water spirit energy on you, your death will be worth it," the old man shouted furiously. As the water spirit energy surged toward him like a living tide, Suzimo had nowhere to dodge. "Then I won't bother dodging," Suzimo said, laughing boldly. Above his head appeared the three gates, and from his body erupted the blade intent of eightfold heaven split. As the torrent of water spirit energy swept over him, trying to strip his life away, the three gates rendered him momentarily invincible. "Kill!" Suzimo roared. The heaven-split blade intent tore through the sea of energy and slashed straight toward the old man's head. The old man's face went pale. There was no time to escape. The strike was faster than lightning, slicing through his brow and beyond. A moment later, his head burst apart like a shattered gourd. Yet Suzumo did not relax, because even as the old man's head exploded, it immediately began to reform, flesh and bone knitting together once more. "You can't kill me," the old man cackled madly. "I am immortal. Who said I wanted to kill you?" Suzumo smiled faintly. He took out the Codex of Life and Death, from which countless chains of fate surged forth, shooting toward the old man to bind him. The water energy behind the old man surged again, but Shadow Tyrant floated above Suzumo's head, and beneath its shadow, the power of the blade raged in all directions. With a deafening boom, the water energy was split apart by the sharp force of the blade. With Shadow Tyrant leading the way, the chains of fate met no resistance. They wrapped around the old man's arms first. The old man struggled violently and managed to tear the chains apart by brute force. Unwilling to continue the fight, he turned and fled into the sky. Suzumo simply smiled, and once again, countless chains of fate burst from the Codex of Life and Death like a storm of writhing serpents. They churned the clouds and winds, sealing off every escape route around the old man. No matter how hard he struggled, more and more chains coiled around him, forming an inescapable prison. Even as his water energy roared furiously, it was useless. At last, the chains enveloped everything, dragging the old man helplessly before Suzumo. "Go on then, keep running," Suzumo said with a grin. "You damn brat," the old man spat, his eyes burning with hatred. "Seeing you this angry only makes me more entertained," Suzumo replied, amused. He began walking back toward the thatched hut. As he approached, the old man froze completely, even his breathing halting, his expression taut with fear, as though terrified that Suzumo would uncover some dark secret. "What are you afraid of?" Suzumo asked lightly. "What do you want? Name your terms, anything," the old man pleaded. "Where did the water beasts come from?" Suzumo asked. It was a technique passed down by our ancestor," the old man sighed. "If you wish to learn it, I can teach you, but it's not something mastered quickly." "You think I'm a fool? Or are you an idiot yourself?" Suzumo's tone hardened. "Do you even understand what it means to create life? If your so-called ancestor could do it, perhaps that's believable. But someone like you? Trash like you? Do you think this is some cultivation technique that can just be taught?" The lie was crushed without mercy. Perhaps even the old man himself didn't grasp how world-shaking the ability to create life truly was. Suzumo stopped before the thatched hut. The bound old man grew even more panicked, shouting, "If you harm me, my ancestor will never forgive you. Our ancestor is invincible across the ages." "You're nervous," Suzumo said with a smirk. He opened the door of the hut. The interior was simple, just a stone bed and a worn-out table. The entire place so fragile it looked ready to collapse at any moment. He scanned the small room. Nothing seemed unusual. Still, there had to be something he was missing. He looked again, circling the room, then stomped on the floor. Yes, there was a hollow echo beneath his feet. Clenching his right hand into a fist, spirit energy surged around it. With one powerful strike, he smashed the ground. A thunderous crash shook the earth. Cracks spread outward like a spider web, and within them, Suzumo spotted a hidden passageway. "Don't go down there," the old man cried in panic. "Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Just don't go down there." Suzumo ignored him and descended. The deeper he went, the more the air thickened with water element spirit energy. Though no water was visible, he felt as if he were standing at the bottom of the ocean. The sensation was strange, almost tranquil, almost suffocating. "You bastard!" the old man screamed. "That thing is mine. No one can take it, it's mine. Mine!" His expression twisted with madness. He mumbled incoherently, his mind teetering on the edge of insanity. At last, Suzimo reached the bottom. It was a sealed chamber, dark and silent, illuminated only by a single dim night pearl. Chains lay scattered across the floor, but they were no ordinary iron chains. They were forged from myriad-year firesoul stone, tempered in molten skyfire. Each chain was indestructible and carried a burning energy within. Suzimo lifted his gaze. At the end of the chains stood a massive cross, and upon it, something was bound. He stepped closer, and when he saw the figure clearly, even he was taken aback. It looked human, but its skin, eyes, scalp, and lips were all a deep, oceanic blue. A blue man. He was bound by the chains, his entire body covered in wounds, tortured beyond recognition. Yet what shocked Suzimo most was that from those wounds flowed not blood, but blue liquid, like water. "What is this?" Suzimo demanded, looking at the old man. The blue man's life was faint. He was barely conscious. "That's mine, you can't take it. It's mine, you can't." The old man muttered, still lost in his delirium. Suzimo frowned, then struck him across the face. Slap! The blow jolted the old man back to his senses. Seeing the scene before him, his face went pale. "I'll ask again," Suzimo said coldly. "What is that thing?" "Around 1,000 years ago," the old man began, his face ashen. "I was just an ordinary Empyrean Meridian cultivator. My lifespan was nearing its end, and I wandered into this land. That's when I met this strange blue man." He spoke slowly, trembling as though recalling a nightmare. "At first, we became acquainted. He learned of my fate and gave me a single drop of his blood. After consuming it, I found that my life had been extended by 100 years. His lips quivered as he continued. For that 100 years, we became the closest of friends. He told me he had no memories, no past. I taught him about the world. But good times don't last. After a century, my end came once more. So you imprisoned him, to feed on him endlessly, to extend your life without limit," Suzimo said flatly. Yes, I did," the old man sobbed, clutching his head. "I was worse than a beast, worse than a dog. But I didn't want to die." He wept openly. "Later, I discovered that his blood didn't just grant longevity. It could also strengthen one's cultivation. From the Empyrean Meridian realm, I advanced to the Grand Emperor realm in a short time. If I had a few thousand more years, I believe I could reach sainthood." "And what are you now?" Suzimo asked. "But a walking corpse. Then tell me, why did you attack Firebane City? What were those water beasts?" "His blood can manifest as water beasts," the old man answered weakly. "Each drop of his blood becomes a living creature. As for the attack on Firebane City, I had no choice. I'd used too much of his blood. If I didn't replenish him in time, he would die. Later, I discovered the only thing that could sustain him, the flesh and blood of the fire god race." "To stand against the fire god race?" Suzimo said in surprise. "That's right," the old man replied quickly. "He only needs to devour a single member of the fire god race to recover a drop of blood." "A single drop of blood with such wondrous power," Suzimo murmured with a faint smile. "It can extend life, even create living beings. A creature like this truly unheard of. How fascinating." "I'll give you everything I have," the old man said carefully. "You can even take the blue man. I don't want him anymore. Just let me go." "Ever heard the saying, 'The man with a treasure invites his own doom'?" Suzimo replied calmly. "I don't want this matter to spread. Don't worry, I'll leave this place forever," the old man promised in haste. "I'll change my name, disappear completely. You'll never see me again." "I don't believe you," Suzimo said, waving his hand. "Only the dead can keep secrets." The codex of life and death trembled, and with a sudden pull, it swallowed the bound old man whole. Suzimo paid him no further attention. The man was insignificant, just a minor figure in a larger mystery. What truly drew Suzimo's interest was the blue man before him. Because Su Zimo had once comprehended the essence of the water beast, he recognized a familiar aura within this being, as if they shared the same origin. He walked up to the blue man and crouched down, sending a thread of spirit energy into his body. But the moment his energy entered, it was as though it had fallen into the depths of the sea, silent and without response. Su Zimo frowned, puzzled. From Bian Shishir's clues, he had believed the ancient god he sought was most likely the ancient water god, Gongtu. He had thought the one behind the water beasts must be a descendant or inheritor of the water god's legacy. Yet now, reality had diverged from his expectations. Instead of finding the traces of an ancient god, he had found this strange blue man. "Can you hear me?" Su Zimo asked softly. The blue man remained motionless, deeply unconscious, unable to respond. Then Su Zimo suddenly remembered what the old man had said earlier. This blue man's nourishment came from the fire god race. Could it be that feeding him a certain number of fire god race members would restore his strength? There were too many unanswered questions. Su Zimo broke the chains binding the blue man and placed him inside the god world, ordering Paimon and the others to guard and care for him carefully. It seemed he would need to find members of the fire god race soon. For now, he decided to head to the Chaos Fire God realm. After all, he had promised Bian Wenzhou. He wasn't particularly interested in the fire god race's ancestral grounds, but he would keep his word. Summoning chaos, Su Zimo stepped onto the beast's back, soaring into the sky. The massive figure gradually disappeared beyond the horizon. The Chaos Fire God realm was one of the 7 great fire domains, and among them, one of the most powerful. It was named Chaos Fire because it had been founded by the legendary Chaos Fire progenitor, one who possessed the primal Chaos God King physique, one of the 10 God King physiques of legend. This physique could fuse with all elemental attributes, absorbing the powers of heaven and earth. Yet the fire god race cared for no other attribute but fire. They devoted themselves solely to it, refining the primal Chaos God King physique to a different level of mastery, ultimately creating the vast Chaos Fire God realm. The heart of the domain lay within a grand city at the center of this blazing region. As the contest for entry into the fire god race's ancestral grounds approached, many from other cities had already gathered there. Halfway through his journey, Su Zimo realized he was no longer certain of the way. Descending from Chaos's back, he spotted a roadside tea house ahead. In truth, it was less a tea house than a makeshift tent with a few tables beneath it. The Inferno Crucible region was naturally a land of scorching heat. Wherever one went, several blazing suns hung perpetually in the sky. For the fire god race, this world was a paradise. But for other races, it was harsh and suffocating. Such tea stalls offered weary travelers a rare place to rest and quench their thirst. Su Zimo decided to stop and ask for directions. Inside were only a few crude tables. At the left table sat a disheveled middle-aged man with his head bowed, long hair hiding his face as he quietly sipped tea. At the right table sat a group of young men and women dressed in white robes. Their leader was an elderly man, clearly their teacher. The middle-aged man sat silently, motionless, while the group on the right was lively and noisy. The young disciples chattered like a flock of birds, crowding around their elder and peppering him with questions. "Master, do we really have the right to compete in the Chaos Fire God realm?" one girl asked. "Yes, we're human, after all. What if the fire god race refuses to let us participate?" Another added. "And if we actually win a spot to enter the ancestral grounds?" A third said eagerly. "Couldn't we sell it? We could trade it for fire god race resources and revive our celestial mortal holy lands." The elder smiled patiently and answered each question one by one, showing no annoyance at their excitement. "Would you like some tea, traveler?" The tea seller, an elderly woman, asked as she busied herself boiling water. "Bring me your best brew," Su Zimo replied. "I'm sorry, young man, we only have loose leaf tea here," the old woman said apologetically. "Loose tea will do," Su Zimo said with a faint smile, unconcerned. He found an empty table and sat down. The young disciples glanced curiously at him. "You've all been in seclusion too long," the elder reminded his students kindly. Be mindful of yourselves while outside. Then he turned toward Su Zimo with an apologetic smile. Su Zimo nodded politely in acknowledgement. Before long, the water boiled, and the old woman carefully brought the steaming cup to his table. Please enjoy, sir, she said. Wait a moment, Su Zimo said. I'd like to ask for some directions. He casually placed several dozen spirit crystals on the table. I can't accept that much, the old woman said quickly, waving her hands. Ask whatever you wish. I'm headed to the Chaos Fire God realm, Su Zimo said with a smile. Could you tell me how to get there? Before the old woman could answer, one of the white-robed disciples nearby exclaimed in surprise, We're going to the Chaos Fire God realm too. Why don't we travel together? Cheer, the elder said sharply, frowning at the girl. Did you already forget what I just told you? Then he looked back at Su Zimo and said politely, The Chaos Fire God realm isn't far from here. If you travel 300 miles north, you'll see a volcano. The entrance lies at its base. Su Zimo thought for a moment. He was unfamiliar with the terrain, and these people seemed knowledgeable enough. Smiling, he said, Then perhaps we could travel together. It might be safer for everyone. If the young master wishes, I have no objection, the elder replied. But my disciples are inexperienced. This journey is meant to broaden their horizons. If they offend you in any way, I beg your forgiveness. As the two spoke, the sound of hurried footsteps suddenly came from outside. The disheveled man who had been sitting quietly at the left table tensed instantly, then bolted out of the tea house in a blur. Master, one of the disciples said nervously, hearing the sounds of fighting outside. Drink your tea, the old man replied, waving his hand. The old woman who ran the tea stall seemed frightened and slipped into the tent. Su Zimo looked up, his eyes turning toward the outside. Amid the swirling yellow sand, several figures were fighting fiercely. Faint shouts echoed through the chaos. Qin Long Yong, you stole our sect's sacred treasure. Surrender now. Wei Wuyan, you know better than anyone who really stole it. Don't try to throw mud on me. If you want to fight, then fight. A dozen people clashed in the sandstorm. Though outnumbered, the disheveled man held his ground. Neither side could gain an advantage for the moment. Su Zimo finished his cup of tea and looked toward the old man from the celestial mortal holy lands. Let's go. They're still fighting out there. Shouldn't we wait? One of the disciples asked hesitantly. If we wait for them to finish, it'll be dark, Su Zimo said, waving his hand. We'll go our own way. It has nothing to do with us. The old man nodded in agreement. As the group stepped out of the tea stall, the combatants noticed them and froze for a moment, their expressions wary. The disheveled man's eyes lit up with sudden hope. Brother Wang, Brother Li, help me, he shouted toward Su Zimo's group. You know these people? The opposing fighters demanded, their faces darkening. The old man from the celestial mortal holy lands frowned slightly and said to the messy-haired stranger, Friend, that's rather shameless of you. Kill them! One of the enemies shouted impatiently. Half of them charged at the disheveled man, while the others rushed toward Su Zimo and his group. The glory of heaven's might, arise, my sect's divine power. Before Su Zimo even moved, the old man had already acted. His hands formed a flurry of seals, and behind him appeared a massive celestial sword, over 100 meters long. Lightning crackled around its blade as it swept horizontally through the air. In an instant, dozens of heads fell to the ground. This old man was a cultivator at the God Meridian realm, a formidable level of power. In the 9 heavens, a grand emperor had the strength to found a Tao court. A saint sovereign held upper-tier influence and could create a God realm. And an infinite Tao cultivator could look down upon all 9 heavens. Though the God Meridian realm was far weaker than a grand emperor, one had to remember the 9 heavens were vast beyond measure, and most cultivators struggled below that level. Seeing the old man's devastating attack, the remaining enemies panicked and fled. The old man did not pursue. His gaze merely lingered on the messy-haired man. Thank you for saving my life, the disheveled man said with a forced smile. Things happened fast just now. I didn't mean to drag you in. Could we perhaps be friends? Sir, what do you think? The old man asked Suzimo, deferring to him. This old man does know how to behave, Suzimo thought with a faint smile. He raised his right hand, grabbing the disheveled man by the throat and lifting him into the air. Those people out there were ants to me, Suzimo said casually. If you had asked me nicely, maybe I'd have killed them for you. But you tried to use me. Tell me, do you think you're worthy? He squeezed and snapped the man's neck. Unfortunately, the man wasn't of the fire god race, or Suzimo might have tested him on the blue-skinned man's condition. Seeing Suzimo kill so coldly, the disciples of the celestial mortal holy lands shrank back in fright, huddling behind their master. May I ask your name, young lord? The old man said politely. I am Zhang Hengji, holy lord of the celestial mortal holy lands. Suzimo, he replied with a wave of his hand. Just a nameless wanderer. Nameless wanderer Suzimo, he found the phrase rather fitting. Are you also heading to the Chaos Fire God realm to compete for entry into the Fire God race's ancestral grounds? Zhang Hengji asked with a smile. Something like that, Suzimo nodded. And your sect as well? Yes, but the competition isn't what truly matters, Zhang Hengji said. I mainly want these youngsters to gain some worldly experience. As they spoke, the group continued toward the Chaos Fire God realm. After witnessing Suzimo's ruthless decisiveness, the disciples had grown quiet. They no longer chirped and joked as before. The closer they came to the fire heaven, the drier the land grew. The earth cracked like desert stone. Vegetation was rare, and water nearly non-existent. The fire god race hated water. It was their natural opposite. After about 7 days of travel, Zhang Hengji pointed toward the horizon one afternoon. Look, young Lord Su, he said, smiling. That towering blaze in the distance. That's the entrance to the Chaos Fire God realm. Suzimo nodded slightly. In the past few days, he'd learned that Zhang Hengji, though not particularly powerful, had a solid Dao heart and sharp insight. A humble man, but a shrewd one. As the group continued on, they suddenly heard a woman's cry. Help! Please, help me! A young woman came running from the distance, shouting desperately. When she saw people ahead, her voice grew louder and clearer. She wore a red dress that stood out vividly against the yellow sands, her silken ribbons fluttering as she ran. When she reached them, she was gasping for breath. Miss, what's wrong? Zhang Hengji asked. Someone's trying to kill me, she cried. Please, save me. My father is a guardian of the Chaos Fire God realm. If you save me, he'll reward you generously. Zhang Hengji smiled faintly. Miss, there's no one behind you. The woman froze, turned, and saw nothing but the empty desert. How is that possible? They were just there, she murmured, her face twisting in confusion before she sighed. Forget it. She waved a hand dismissively. Could you at least escort me to the Chaos Fire God realm? It is just ahead, Zhang Hengji replied. If the young lady wishes to travel together, we don't mind. He glanced at Suzimo, who gave a slight nod. He didn't care either way. As they walked, the woman proved to be remarkably talkative. Her curiosity seemed endless. You're here to compete, right? She asked. I don't think you stand much of a chance. The God Realm released a list of the top contenders, the Dragonfire rankings, and none of you are on it. Her words made the disciples bristle. Our holy Lord is very strong, one protested. Oh really? The woman smiled. How strong? The God Realm's chosen contestants are all Grand Emperors, and some are on the verge of becoming Saint Sovereigns. At that, the disciples fell silent. To them, both Grand Emperors and Saint Sovereigns were distant, untouchable figures. What's wrong? You're scared already? The young woman said with a smug smile. Then she added, but don't worry. The outer matches are overseen by my father. I can ask him to pair you with some weaker opponents so you'll last a few more rounds. Hearing this, Suzimo couldn't help but shake his head with a faint smile. He could tell the girl meant no harm. She was just a bit spoiled and proud, but not a bad person. "What's your name?" Su Zimo asked. "This young lady changes neither name nor surname," she declared proudly. "I am Lu Huahua. Why are you asking? Don't tell me you've fallen for me? My future husband must be a true hero who stands tall above all others." "Fallen for you?" Su Zimo shook his head. "If there are gods in this world, I am their daddy. If there are devils, I am the king of all. Do you really think I'd be interested in a little girl who still smells of milk?" "Who are you calling a little girl?" Lu Huahua puffed out her chest defiantly. "I'm already 19. By all rights, I could be married." "Oh, I see," Su Zimo said with mock realization. "So you're still single because no one wants you." "You're talking nonsense," Lu Huahua snapped. "There are so many people asking to marry me they could trample my doorstep flat. I just have high standards, that's all." Their banter continued the whole way, and Su Zimo found the journey far less dull for it. At last, the group arrived at the entrance to the Chaos Fire God Realm. It was a living volcano, flames bursting skyward in waves that lit up the heavens. The ground all around was covered in dark gray ash, and crowds had already gathered there. Some were competitors for the God Realm trials. Others had come just to watch. This volcano was unlike any other. The entrance to the Chaos Fire God Realm lay at its very summit. Around the mountain, all kinds of structures rose from the molten terrain, inns built atop magma flows, taverns standing amid seas of fire. For the fire god race, this was a paradise. For the human disciples of the celestial mortal holy lands, it was unbearable heat. Fortunately, Zhang Hengji had prepared. He took out several absolute cold pills and handed them to his disciples. "Take these," he said. "They'll protect you from the heat for a short while. But be careful when walking here. If you fall into the lava, you'll be reduced to ash in an instant." "This place is terrifying," one disciple whispered nervously. "For the fire god race, it's not dangerous at all," Zhang Hengji said with a chuckle. "They could bathe in lava and call it refreshing." He offered a pill to Su Zimo as well, but Su Zimo simply shook his head. To him, this fire wasn't dangerous at all, merely warm. Lu Huahua looked at the group and said, "Since you escorted me here safely, I'll return the favor. Come with me. I'll take you into the God Realm." Just as she spoke, the magma at the volcano's base suddenly shifted. Flames erupted upward, forming the shape of a golden lotus. Upon the lotus stood a man clad in golden armor, untouched by the fire, his voice echoing with authority. "The Chaos Fire God Realm is now open. All who seek entry, prepare yourselves," he announced. His gaze swept across the entire volcano. 3 days from now, I will declare the rules. Anyone not present by then will forfeit their qualification to compete." When he finished speaking, he and the golden lotus sank back into the molten depths. The crowd erupted into chatter. Lu Huahua led Su Zimo's group along a narrow path winding upward along the volcano's side. The road was uneven, with loose rocks and steep drops. A few times, someone nearly slipped into the lava below. Eventually, they reached a massive city built inside the volcano. It was enormous, sprawling along the crater's edge, complete with every sort of shop and dwelling imaginable. "I'll find you an inn. You should all rest," Lu Huahua said. She guided them to the most luxurious inn in the bustling central district. As soon as they entered, a waiter hurried up to greet her. "Prepare 7 of your best jade fire rooms for me," Lu Huahua ordered casually. "Miss Lu, that's not necessary," Zhang Hengji said quickly. "We can share rooms, 2 or 3 of us together." "Just take them," Lu Huahua said, crossing her arms. "What? Do you think I can't afford it?" The Jade Fire rooms truly lived up to their name. Inside, there was no trace of the volcano's sweltering heat. Instead, a refreshing coolness filled the air. "Interesting," Su Zimo said with a faint smile. After arranging their lodgings, Lu Huahua left. Night was falling and the group decided to rest. Su Zimo brought out the blue man from the god world, and was surprised to see him absorbing the volcano's energy. Or rather, not the volcano's energy itself, but something hidden within it. As the blue man drew in the mysterious power, Su Zimo could sense the powers contained within it, pure, fundamental, like the origin of all edicts. His comprehension deepened rapidly. By dawn, he could already feel the heavens stirring, the signs of a coming tribulation. Once he overcame it, he would become a true saint sovereign. Suddenly there came a knock at the door. Bang, bang, bang. Su Zimo stepped out of his room. Lu Huahua was waiting outside, with Zhang Hengji and the disciples behind her. "What is it?" Su Zimo asked. "There's a phenomenon tonight," Lu Huahua said excitedly. "9 dragons saluting heavens. We came to invite you to see it." 9 dragons saluting heavens? Su Zimo repeated, curious. "You're really lucky," she said proudly. "It's a once-in-a-century event. The 9 dragons phenomenon represents divine recognition. It's said that the current Chaos Fire progenitor once received the acknowledgement of 7 fire dragons back in his day." "Recognition? What do you mean by that?" Su Zimo asked, puzzled. "The volcano we're standing on," Lu Huahua explained, "was brought here long ago by the fire progenitor himself, using his supreme power. The flames can reflect a person's future. The stronger your destined path, the more fire dragons acknowledge you. They say that anyone who earns the recognition of all 9 dragons is destined to become an infinite Tao powerhouse." "That sounds a bit exaggerated," Su Zimo said with a small smile. The group left the inn and stepped outside. The sky above was already crimson red. Crowds were gathering at a cliffside, the closest point to the heart of the phenomenon. From the heavens came faint, resonant dragon roars. Su Zimo and the others followed the flow of people to the edge. Then, someone suddenly cried out in astonishment. "It's Xiao Lianian from Red Dragon City. I've heard Xiao Lianian is one of the top contenders in this tournament. I wonder how strong he really is. He must be here for the 9 dragons phenomenon, to see how many dragons will acknowledge him." Exclamations and murmurs rippled through the crowd, a display of every kind of human emotion. Under the vast dominion of the Chaos Fire God realm lay countless cities. Firebane City was one, and Red Dragon City was another. Xiao Lianian exuded the overwhelming aura of a grand emperor, radiating his might as if he feared others might somehow miss it. He strode through the air, gaze fixed upon the crimson heavens and the faintly visible red dragons within. He was waiting for the true emergence of the 9 dragons saluting heavens. As time passed, more and more cultivators gathered. The tournament's rules would only be announced 3 days later, and in their boredom, everyone was eager for any spectacle. "Look, Luo Ji from Beacon Fire City is here too. That lunatic? We'd better stay far away from him." While people whispered, a young man as graceful as carved jade approached from afar. He carried a folding fan, his black hair falling to his shoulders, his features almost unervingly beautiful. His eyes were tinged violet, his skin pale to the point of illness. As Su Zimo watched him draw nearer, he realized the man's path led directly toward their group. Beside him, Lu Huahua grew visibly uneasy, taking a few steps back. Su Zimo's eyes narrowed. He seemed to have guessed something. "Little Hua," Luo Ji said with a wide grin. "You see your elder brother and don't even greet him? Help me," Lu Huahua whispered urgently, retreating behind Su Zimo's group. "Come along with me, little Hua," Luo Ji said lightly. Before Su Zimo could respond, Zhang Hengji had already stepped forward, placing himself between Lu Huahua and Luo Ji. "Lord Luo," Zhang said firmly, "Miss Lu is a friend of mine. What business do you have with her?" Zhang Hengji was not eager to offend Luo Ji, but after traveling together, he'd come to see Lu Huahua as a lively but kind-hearted girl. He couldn't simply stand by and watch her be taken away. "And who might you be?" Luo Ji asked coldly, his smile fading. "Zhang Hengji, Holy Lord of the Celestial Mortal Holy Lands," Zhang replied. "Never heard of it?" Luo Ji said, waving his hand dismissively. "Some random sect, no doubt. Step aside. If you spoil my mood, I'll wipe out your sect on a whim." The disciples behind Zhang Hengji bristled with anger. 3,000 years ago, one of them muttered, "Our sect also produced a grand emperor. We're no random rabble." "So you've chosen death, then?" Luo Ji said flatly, lifting an eyebrow. "Luo Ji," Lu Huahua said, stepping forward reluctantly. "If you've got business, take it up with me. Leave them out of this." "We're betrothed by our elders," Luo Ji said with a smirk. "Is it not only right that you serve your future husband?" He gestured toward Su Zimo's group. "If you don't want them to die, come with me." Lu Huahua's face twisted in distress, hesitation clouding her eyes. Zhang Hengji, ever the righteous man, spoke again. "If you wish to take Miss Lu," he said, "you'll have to step over my corpse first. My life has amounted to little, but at least let me experience a few of Lord Luo's famed techniques." "Experience me? You think you're worthy?" Luo Ji sneered. "Seems your charm isn't working, Luo Ji." A mocking voice cut in. Two groups were approaching from the distance. To the left stood a man in a white robe embroidered with the characters Ancient Rock. "It's Ba Xia from Ancient Rock City." Someone recognized him immediately. The group on the right consisted entirely of women, led by one whose face was hidden beneath a sheer veil. Her figure, however, graceful curves, a slender waist that could be held in one hand, radiated allure. "Shangguan Xian," a man gasped dreamily. "Isn't she from the divine martial god realm? What's she doing here in ours?" "There's no rule saying people from other domains can't join," someone answered. The one who had spoken earlier was Ba Xia. He smirked at Luo Ji and said, "This isn't Beacon Fire City, Luo Ji. Your word doesn't carry much weight here." Then he turned to Zhang Hengji. "Don't worry, I'll stand up for you." Zhang Hengji looked at him with genuine gratitude. Luo Ji's expression darkened. He hadn't truly been angry before, but now, after Ba Xia's interference, fury flashed in his eyes. "You really want a medal?" he asked coldly. "Lord Luo," Zhang Hengji said, trying to de-escalate. "If Miss Lu is willing, I won't interfere." "Sha Yi," Luo Ji said impatiently. "Kill him." At his command, a man stepped out from behind him, his eyes flat and lifeless, his entire body emanating boundless killing intent. Twin short blades glimmered in his hands as his figure blurred into a streak of lightning, lunging straight for Zhang Hengji. Though both men were of the God Meridian realm, Sha Yi's ferocity was overwhelming. His every move was deadly, his attacks relentless. Zhang Hengji was caught off guard and immediately pressed into a disadvantage. After just a few exchanges, a harsh rip split the air. Sha Yi's blade had already cut into Zhang Hengji's abdomen. "Next time remember that playing the hero requires strength," Luo Ji spat disdainfully. "Lord Ba," Zhang Hengji gasped, clutching his wound. "Please help me." Sha Yi's attacks were merciless, his movements fearless, fighting as if his own life meant nothing. Zhang Hengji dared not meet him head-on, and his disadvantage grew worse with each exchange. Ba Xia, however, merely chuckled at Zhang's plea. "I only said I'd make things fair, not that I'd fight your battles," his expression seemed to say. Even Su Zimo couldn't help but shake his head with a faint smile. Zhang Hengji was righteous and perceptive, but too rigid for his own good. Did he really think someone like Ba Xia would risk himself to help? That earlier remark had only been meant to annoy Luo Ji. "All right, enough," Su Zimo said, lifting a hand. If he didn't intervene, Zhang Hengji might actually die, and though Su Zimo cared little for his fate, the man had at least led him safely to the God realm. That counted for something. His words went ignored. Su Zimo sighed. "Why make me do this?" He waved his hand. The magma beneath them suddenly surged to life. A dragon of molten fire erupted from the ground, roaring as it lunged toward Sha Yi. Sha Yi tried to evade, but the crushing pressure of Su Zimo's aura froze him in place. A moment later, the fiery dragon swallowed him whole. With a deafening rumble, it dove back into the magma, dragging him down into the molten depths. Silence fell across the entire crowd.